Chapter 335 Break. Extra Chapter. Every new plus $10 patron or PayPal. Extra Chapter. 5,000 vote. Extra Chapter. 8,000 vote. You come in. Someone is waiting for you. For me. Yes, come in. Bothila invited John into her store. In there, John saw two beautiful ladies, one young and one old. They were in yellow priest habits and looked quite peaceful. Ladies, this is the man I talked to you about. He was a merchant traveling and got attacked by some Hagravens who trapped him in a briar-heart tree. He managed to break free, but he got some vines leeching on his body, and they are weakening him greatly. I thought to bring him today for Lady Sybil to see him. Bothila spoke to the old woman. Sybil? John looked at the old woman and understood who she is. The Sybil of Dibella, the spiritual leader of the cult of Dibella in Skyrim. A very respected and generous figure. The old woman nodded and spoke. Child, can I see that? John hesitated for a bit, but he then removed his shirt and showed his upper half to the priestesses. Dibella! The young priestess gasped from shock, and the old one narrowed her eyes. Around John's body, a large vine grew like a lively external organ. It was red and green with thorns growing from it. One can tell that the vine was having blood flowing through it. How strange! The Sybil of Dibella concentrated on the vine and thought. The young priestess, however, kept looking at John's body with a daze. The left half of John's body was paler than his right half. His left foot and some fingers of the left hand were missing. There were many wounds and claw marks that barely healed, as well as over 20 stab mark. One of them was in the heart. You got stabbed in the heart and lived? She looked at John as if he is a monster. When he entered, she was about to cuss at Bothila for bringing a beggar-like man in the presence of the Sybil of Dibella, but that was not the case anymore. John seemed like a survivalist who just has been through a tough experience. Have you been through oblivion by any chance? The priestess asked. 3 times without a scratch. This is all our dear planet Nirn, John said in self-mockery. He hasn't lost his sense of humor. Ha! Bothila said. Last month, the guards picked him from the gates with many wounds. I treated him from over a dozen infections and curses, yet he seemed to not be even bothered about them, and kept cracking jokes. Bothila meant to ease up young priestess's worry only to find her face turning pale. My goodness! A dozen infection and curses? You are still alive. John smiled and didn't reply. He also suffered a concussion that caused him to not be able to talk and hear properly. Still, he lived through it. The young priestess wasn't willing to ask any more. John's well-endowed body could tell that young priestess a lot already. This man was both a warrior and a rich person. A priestess of Dibella can tell, after all, they are the ones versed in the ways of love, art and beauty after all. I see. The Sybil of Dibella seemed to have finished her diagnosis. She looked at John and spoke. I am sorry, child. I can't help you. Compared to the Temple of Mara and the Temple of Kinnereth, our temple is the least versed in the ways of healing. Still, that is too advanced for any healer. If my estimation is correct, those vines are already a part of you rather than the tree they grew from. Your blood flows into them and your power is sealed by them. It is like a harmful being that grew attached to your blood. Also, your blood seems to be very special, she said. John felt a bit tight in his chest. He nodded and replied. I am aware of my blood. You do? Yes. But do you mean that the vine is part of my astral body? Astral body? The Sybil didn't understand the term. My soul, is this vine sharing my soul with me? John asked. The Sybil's face became long, but she nodded in the end. I didn't think you would understand it. I didn't want to worry you from the start. John nodded. I am a mystic. I understand. Thank you. John's voice was a bit depressed as he said so. He didn't want to show it and turned his head away. It is okay, child. I wish you luck, the Sibyl said, and stood up from her seat to talk with Bothila. I talked to you about that girl, right? The one our temple picked some time ago. She is really stubborn and very picky about food. She eats the meat raw sometimes and can be very violent. She speaks a few words and sometimes has a fever or a fit of anger. Can you come and see her, Bothila? I am not sure if she is some Reach native or lost traveler. Yes, Lady Sibyl. I will make sure to visit you after I finish with the mister here. Thank you. I am off. The Sibyl turned around and left, but before she gets out, she turned to John. I don't want to give you false hope, but there is a young friend of mine who lives in Eastmarch or Winterhold. She is an excellent healer, and someone I recommend to anyone with a state like yours. She is known as the Sibyl of Kine. Alina? John was taken aback from the woman's statement, and she was taken aback from his question. It seems you and I have some mutual friend, child. Yeah. I can't let her see me this way. John's voice was filled with sadness and his hand hung down. I see, the Sibyl said and spoke again, but something strange happened. Her voice was hers, but her tone and aura were different. Child, you are bound to walk the hard way and carve the hard fate. Your fate is your dream and your dream is your way. Walk the way as we of old once did, and wish upon the stars as your wish is a will granted on your body and land. They are the same and one they ever will be. Dragons you may rob, their might you may claim, their hearts you may conquer, their way you may walk, and stars you may reach. Walk and dream. The Sibyl said something the nun understood. Her voice was ethereal and captivating, it kept ringing in John's mind. Still, once she was done, her aura returned normal, and she looked around for a bit, then smiled and excused herself out. John was still captured at the moment. Last time he heard such an ethereal voice was not too long ago. Just once a month ago on that day. 1 month ago. As Shadow returned to John, things became much better. From the beginning, when the mountain collapsed on John, Shadow jumped into Greed, and possessed it to try and keep John alive under the rubble. Following its policy of not interfering too much, Shadow kept an eye on the Forsworn as they took John, and kept a monitoring where they went and how to get out of that place. Once Shadow found a way for John, he leached back on him and told him everything about his place. He also kindly did some recon and planned an escape route for John. John, on the other hand, was preparing himself for something big. Now that Greed is close to him, he could spread it under the Briarheart Grove and link himself to every Briarheart tree and sapling around. He started to invade them and take their viral podomic energy. In a few days, the small sapling and trees started to die in a charred state as if they were being burnt from the inside. The Hagravens panicked, but none could ever guess that it was his doing. He was trapped in a tree, and it started to grow and cover most of his body, leaving only his face sticking out. Also, his cultivation level advanced like a rocket. Last night, he advanced to the new stage of, and his body filled with vigor. Still, he didn't break out from the tree. The new stage is called the Ebon Blood stage. It focused on enhancing the blood, and its breakthrough came in the form of spitting out a mouthful of black foul blood. When the hags saw that, they seemed happy, thinking that John is finally dying and the large tree he was in is going to grow some mighty Briarheart seeds, but they can't be more wrong. John's increase of power required a more podomic energy, and he was consuming the Briarheart Grove at a maddened state. He was focused, but he had some annoying guests that would cause him a headache every now and then. First, there was Shadow, his talkative friend. There was Grosh and the Forsworn children, who still come to play in the Briarheart Grove. From the looks of it, Grosh is tasked by cleaning the grove, and the children tend to sneak and play with him. John's concussion would hurt the most around children. By the way, the fights around the area has started once again. Seriously? Yes, the midget Reachman was really annoyed and kept sending warriors here and there. What is it this time? Some warriors came a month ago and started searching for you and interrogating the clans around the Reach. They say a few fiery and bloody massacres happened. I guess you know whose style is that. My parents. I seriously like those people. Don't you think I picked the best parents for you to be reincarnated for? Shut up. You are annoying. Oh, don't be shy. You like them a lot, I know you do. By the way, your father looks way better in battle. Conjuring ash storms and turning people into ash, you missed a grand sight. And here you are, getting demoted from a voice in my head to an imaginary friend. What? How rude. Just when are you going to break free already, you lazy bum? When I can. Humph. Back in my day, things were much simpler. I mean, getting trapped by a tree would cause you a lot of shame. Says the guy who let himself get killed like a dork. What? I am a peaceful person. I was trying to talk sense into people. Yeah, the bloody mad warrior who bathes in rivers of his enemy's blood, just in a fit of anger. Wait, my image is that bad? Yep. Fine, I'll shut up. John and Shadow arrived at a truce and John kept mediating. 2 days later, the briar-heart tree around him started to show signs of breaking. John kept struggling until its energies were depleted and it started to char from the inside. Yes, finally. John circulated his energy to the highest speed he can muster and started exhausting the tree before it could recover. Once everything was done right, cracks started to appear on the surface of the tree and it was completely charred. John flexed his muscles and cracks sounded out, not only from the tree but from his sore limbs and neck. And finally it broke. Freedom! John was all smiles as his feet stepped on land again. He almost tripped a few times but his body started to feel the life again. Every bone made crack and John heard it like the sound of freedom. He was still dizzy and needed some time to adapt. Things were nice and all but then he checked his body and anger kicked it. Fuck. Holy fuck shit. All sort of curses came in his head. His left side was completely less lively compared to the right side. The reason was simple. John wanted to preserve his body so he protected it from the inside but he still wanted the viral podomic energy of the briar-heart tree to enter. The only way to do so was to sacrifice some places and these were his left pinky and little fingers. Now, those fingers are completely black and the left side of the body was pale as it was damaged by the invading energy. Things didn't end here. There was a vine wrapped around his left leg and it also showed signs of turning black. Fucking oblivion. He knew what that was, a tissue death. In some advanced cases, it was known as gangrene. There was one way to deal with such a thing. John concentrated on his body and detected how far the case spread. Once he detected its area of effect, he shaped greed into a blade and groan. He mercilessly cut his own dying parts, 2 fingers and 1 foot. Motherfuck, Shadow was taken shocked out of his mind. Shut up. It was the only way. With that out of the way, John shaped some parts of the greed into some fingers and a foot to replace the ones he cut. Lost limbs are no problem to him. He can replace them whenever have enough energy to do so. Hey. Shut up, man. I am busy here. No, look behind you, you dolt. John looked behind him and saw a person who shouldn't be here in any way possible. It was none other than his labor's prophet, Arania Ionith. Era Nea? John spoke. Arania looked at him smiling. As she spoke, her voice was the same but her tone was different. It was much more ethereal if the word fit the description. So, you finally decided to move, young John Hild. Her voice echoed deep in John's mind and soul. Well, I'll be damned. Even Shadow was surprised. John looked at Arania and narrowed his eyes. He can almost swear that he can see an aura of light around her with a star floating over a shoulder and a crescent on the other. It was her. Azura. PayPal. Me/Eldokmizi. Pat Rayon, remove. Pat Rayon. com/eldokmizi. Discord. GG/GKCKVA7. Chapter 336, Azura. This is an extra sponsored by @coffee_fiend. Azura, Queen of Dawn and Dusk, Mother of the Rose, Queen of the Night Sky, Magic between the Realms, Lady of Vanity and Egotism. To what do we owe the pleasure? John spoke his mind to Azura, knowing that she reads his heart. The glimmering light around Priestess Urania shone brighter as Azura's divine possession. She smiled, or rather it was Azura. The smile carried a destructive force of nature that made John almost want to back away and talk to her from the other end of the cave. A pleasure I may not offer if my words you cannot understand. I hinder you not, young John Hild, but your fate and many are entwined. Azura said in an ethereal voice. John's face carried a hint of a frown. Tell me something I don't know. He was still in a fit of anger for cutting his own foot and fingers. He also had many questions to ask, but he had to be patient in front of Azura. Once you tainted the brightest star, you sat a series of actions on the motion of the great wheel of fate. Things are not the same, fates changed, and my divinity in the land is not as bright as it once was. My divinity can be dealt with, but the motions of change are imminent, and around the land, it will show effects. My labors to you is to alter the fate that will be. You mean I changed the future? Greatly. I don't understand. John was confused. How can turning the star into a black one can alter fate that much? In game. I mean in the future, if the star got altered into black, nothing that serious will happen. Azura looked at John with interest. Speaking of future, as you already know. John looked at Azura with displeasure and nodded. I performed divination of the future. Then you should know that your current fate is not as strong as it is in the future. Your fate now is chaotic, but tomorrow it will be set in stone. Harder to carve. I don't understand. Wait. Are you saying that if I tainted the star in the future rather than now, my actions would have no backlash like this one? It is as you said. Your fate hasn't started to take action, your fate protects others once it takes action. Now that it hasn't taken action, it can barely shield you and some around you. John was stunned for a second. He understood what Azura was saying. In other words, when the game events start, his actions will be protected by his fate, but because his fate is currently this strong, it can change many around it. Taking a lot of actions before the start of the game events is changing the future on a massive scale. This is bad. What exactly have I changed? My divinity is weakened. Who do you think will suffer? Your followers. And when the star was tainted black, who do you think gained power? John pondered for a bit. The black star is a black soul gem, which is a basic tool in necromancy. Necromancers. Be specific. John thought fast and managed to put all the clues together. A name came to his mind and his mouth opened wide. You've got to be kidding me. I am pleased that you are knowledgeable. Among other things, your labors shall come 7. The first was to aid a laborer in the realm of madness. The second was to save the brother whom you need more than you know. You have done both well. So Wulfur is safe. I knew it. Thank goodness. John sighed, but I don't understand. What does Isha and Wulfur has to do with any of that? Brothers are bonded strong, you shall know and see. The laborer carries a secret you need for your last labor. John scratched his head. I am completely lost here. So that thing about tainting the star will make that guy my last labor and Isha is necessary for it? Azura nodded. Okay, at least I knew my what last labor will be. John held his head that was started to be painful. Worry not, young John Hild. Your fate will guide others to triumph. My only purpose is to mend what was torn. You shall receive your third labor now. Azura said. Wait. I still have questions. Nefertiti, my cat. These vines are blocking us from each other. Where can I find her? John asked in worry. Over the Fae. Worry not. for by you she is bound and in a warm place, she is loved and protected. You need to worry about another. Who? The girl with eyes of colors. Alina? John asked. The other girl. Jull? What's wrong with Jull? John's expressions paled. He almost jumped at Azura, but Shadow was there to stop him by pinning Greed to the ground. John barely behaved, but he kept glaring at Azura, who only smiled in return. A child of Dunmare gave birth to that girl, a girl with mixed race. Do you know why people with mixed race are not a lot seen? Azura asked. John's brows furrowed. He was aware of the rarity of half-race people. In this world, if a man and woman mated and a child was born, in most cases that child will be born in the mother's race with some hints from the father. Still, Julliner was a half-human half-elf, a very unusual breed. Most of those who born with half-races die young. This was common knowledge, but it is not rare for those children to survive. I know why. Then do you understand the reason? I don't. By the higher beings, mortal races are patronized. From them, they have protection and draw fate. On birth, when given a name, children gain fate that if missed will bring demise to their lives, and no higher being patronize a child of another. That's why mixed-blood children are ignored by fate. Also, if a higher being falls or changes, fates of those who are patronized follow. John stopped Azura with his hand. Hold up a minute. You are saying that mortals need higher beings to patronize them to get fate and blessing, which is like those racial powers. This happens when the child is given a name, right? Azura nodded. So if anything happened to the god that patronize a race, the race will face changes. Like how Trinimac was eaten by Bothia and then got defecated as a pile of dung, Trinimac changed into Malakath and his followers changed from high elves into orcs. Azura nodded again with a smile, as if she remembered something pleasant. Then Jull is like a child who was born with no fate. A weak fate, but you already gave her fate. Not strong but enough for her survival, as long as you survive. Me? Yes. You gave her a name only you understand, you gave her hope and home. The girl worships you and your fate qualifies you as a higher being. You are patronizing the girl as her god. What? John was not accepting this anymore. With you understanding that, you should know that getting weakened like that has weakened your influence on the girl, and she has fallen sick. John's body shuddered. The complicated problems in his head are now very simple compared to the matters of divinity. This was way too messed up for his head to handle. He held his head as a sharp headache assaulted him again. He didn't care and looked at Azura. Please. Without him saying, Azura nodded. Your feelings are sincere. I already protected the girl's life as much as I could, so she will survive another half a year, but you are her patron is to do the rest. And here comes your third labor. Azura said. John's face was grim black, but he nodded waiting for hope. You are weakened. Heal as soon as you can, the secret lies in the reach no place else. By blood, by curse and by sacrifice, you shall recover. Azura said so, and the ethereal feeling started to fade. Before her divine possession ends, she left some last words for John. Help I offer you not, but sincerity you may get. Happy birthday, young John Hild. His mind turned blank for a few minutes. Too much needed to be done, and he still didn't escape. In a few minutes, someone will come to check, but he was not even caring about that anymore. When Azura disappeared, she took Urania with her and left John to think. Hell, he can't think anymore. His last labor was revealed to him, and he discovered how it was all his fault. Not only that, he discovered the strange state of Julliner. Not only that, he must not leave the Reach because the cure to his case is in this place. Fuck! John punched the ground with all his might and the ground shocked. Level 1, Ebon Blood Stages punch started to shake the cave. His frustration and hate rose up. Self-loath and many negative feelings conflicted with each other. He needed to get this thing over within half a year. Lucky for him, it was plenty of time. John looked around him, and saw no other thing other than to greed with him. It was satisfyingly more than enough. Greed was no ordinary being. It was a part of John with abilities that transcend sense. Just like any inhabitant of the shadow world, it can hide from even the eyes of the Daedric princes. Greed has the ability that John calls release, which allows it to possess dead objects and show its true nature or empower it, all based on the power of John. Rather than that, greed is a formless black matter that can harden in any shape John needs: swords, bows, spears, armor, etc. That was enough for John, who can't use magic, and his only power is his ridiculous physical strength. Keeping some parts of greed, as the body parts he cut, John walked straight to the entrance of the cave. Just as he was about to walk out, someone came in. Grosh! The gigantic freak saw John walking free, and almost fell on his butt. John seemed like his norm but was carrying a strange smile on his face. It was not a determined heroic smile. It was cold. It was cruel. It was sadistic. John may not be able to unleash his tyrant aura, but sure as hell the tyrant was released. He was not just the tyrant from before. He was a wounded beast who is not burdened by anyone to save at the moment. A lone wounded beast. His mind was overwhelmed with all the things he just heard from the goddess, so he was in a maddened state. To sum it up, the beast was wounded, maddened, and lone. So it is. Grosh. John couldn't help but feel his heart dance. Grosh. Grosh. Yeah, whatever. John reshaped greed into a long sickle sword and rotated it as he jumped towards Grosh in a blink of an eye and attacked. Before he would know it, Grosh's head was on the ground. John kicked the head away like a ball and walked to Grosh's body, taking Wolfer's hammer from it. The champion's cudgel was finally in the hands of John. This was a good weapon. Now greed can focus on defense. With that with him, John turned around to face the entrance and go out, but there seemed to be those ones who usually follow Grosh, the forsworn kids. They were standing at their place, silently looking at the headless Grosh with shock. The kids seemed to have lost someone they love. Tisk. John clicked his tongue. He was still in a mad state. Forsworn always had a grudge on Nords. You hate me now. Fine. Can't leave you to grow up and get revenge one day, can I? PayPal. PayPal. Me/Eldokmizi. Patreon remove. Patreon. com/Eldokmizi. Discord. Discord. GG/GKCKVA7. Chapter 337 Escape. Extra Chapter. Every new plus $10 patron or PayPal. Extra Chapter. 5,000 vote. Extra Chapter. 8,000 vote. Alaric was awakened from his hut and was dragged by his men out. A crisis happened. Prince, you need to come. What is that noise? The Nord, God blood, he broke free. Impossible. It was completely not possible. The Nord was finally dying after 2 months of anticipation. They almost gave up, and now what? He broke free. Did you capture him? No. Prince, something terrible happened. The man led Alaric to the place where forsworn warriors were gathered. It was a hole opened in the mountain leading to a cave. That cave was leading to one of the Briarheart groves. As soon as Alaric reached the inner cave, more people gathered and a lot of cries were heard. What Alaric saw made him almost go insane with anger. How in the world, why? Children, they were lying on the ground in puddles of their own blood. They were his part of his tribe, and he knew some of them by name. They were all the children that Grosh plays with. Just as his brother crossed his mind, Alaric started looking around for Grosh. Hey, has anyone seen Grosh? Where is my brother? Alaric looked and entered the Briarheart Grove. Gods! He saw every single tree in the grove charred black, like what happened with the saplings some time ago. Still, the real shock was still to come. On the largest Briarheart tree where the Nord was trapped, there was a large thing waiting for him resting on the tree. Alaric's being froze in its place. He didn't want to take a look or look away. He didn't want to go closer or go further. He was just frozen. He saw something his head couldn't accept at all. He didn't understand it even though it was clear to him as the light of day. Shock. Disbelief. Denial. No. He shook his head. That is not how it was supposed to happen. That is not it at all. Grosh. Please no. His brother that protected him for years, and they stood together in many battles against both Nords and Reachmen, was just lying there, head and body separated. John meant it that the body would be visible and the head stuck on the tree. Alaric kept looking at the scene with anger swelling inside him. He was about to shout and rage, but someone came running. We found him. We found the Nord. A forsworn boy came running. Go down there and capture him. Alaric shouted with eyes bloodshot. He didn't go down, Prince. He went up the mountain. Alaric and the forsworn were taken aback for a second. Everyone knew what is up the mountain. Alaric pushed it all to the back of his head and shouted. Go after him. Break his limbs and don't let him die yet. Go. Alaric shouted at the men behind him and walked to Grosh's body, lying it down and putting the head where it should be. He stained his hand with his brother's blood and marked on his face. Whoever kills him will be killed. That Nord is mine. Since the moment he stepped out of the cave, John smelled the fresh air he was deprived from for 2 months. Being forced to live in the hell hole of the Briarheart Grove for that time made him forget how the world smelled so nice. The Briarheart Grove was filled with corpses after all. John knew where he was. According to Shadow, he was southeast of the Reach, not far off Old Hroldan. The place he was in was known as Lost Valley Redoubt, an old ruin filled with forsworn savages. The place was one of the game's best locations too. John looked around and made sure that he wasn't spotted. Lucky for him, he found a sleeping forsworn stationed on the cave with a few arrows with him. John finished the guy by cutting his head in one slash with a greed. He threw the corpse back in the cave and exchanged the rags on him with some of the forsworn's iconic gear of hide and bone. There was no way he can go down their mountain, as he will be found out right away just by his side. At least the disguise he has can support him for a bit if he went up, and from there, he knew the way out. The road up the hill was not hard. It was still early in the morning and John was in a mood that is hard to describe. It was his birthday, and he was breaking free after 2 months of humiliation and imprisonment. He was happy that he was finally free, and he was in a grim mood too, as he was barely resisting the urge to kill every forsworn he saw. Until the way up the mountain, John knew he would find a large waterfall with a large portion of the ruins. Up there was a Nordic word wall that he already knew what it was all about, as Shadow has memorized its content for John. Still, there was some sort of party going around the word wall on the summit. John knew what to expect once he reached up there. Hagravens! He sneaked quietly until he saw the 3 hags that survived the fight with him were busy creating a Briarheart warrior in a hurry. It seems they are working on a complicated ritual. Heart of thorn, bones of the wild in life, forsworn, rise from death, blood of our blood, the hags kept chanting. John has seen that ritual a few times in the grove, so he was familiar with all that dark magic. Because of that, he kept waiting until the crucial moment came. Once the hags were about to place the Briarheart seed in the dead warrior, John transformed greed into a bow and used an arrow to shoot the hand holding the Briarheart seed. Gah! The hag screamed, but John didn't give her any chance to cause a scene. In the next second, he shot 3 arrows all to her head. The other 2 hags were busy trying to cover their sister, and John used that to sneak in as fast as possible and assassinate one of the hags. The second was about to lash at John, but he took the 3rd hag as a hostage right away. Stay, he said. Curses! Curses on you! The free hag seemed to be retreating, so John kicked her sister towards her and the thrust with the greed in the form of a spear. The two hags struggled for a bit, but John transformed greed that was stabbing them and obliterated them from inside. A smirk showed on John's face as he interrupted the ritual successfully. He finally killed those 3 annoying hags that tortured him a lot the past month. He looked around and destroyed some evil totems, then gathered some alchemical ingredients that are easy to preserve and fetch money in a bag he found. As he finished, started to make a big fire at the end of the way to the summit. Alaric finally caught up to John, only to find John waiting for him near the waterfall on the summit. This summit was known as Bard's Leap Summit, a place only the bravest of souls would step in. John stood alone on the end of the way up with a fire in front of him, facing Alaric and his horde. He seemed to be preparing for something big. Alaric looked at him with rage. "Nord, I'll kill you for what you have done." Alaric stepped forward, aiming Bloodskull at its owner. John smirked disdainfully and picked up something from the ground. It was the 3 severed heads of the Hagravens. "No! It can't be, he killed the rest of the matrons." The Forsworn were infuriated at John, and all aimed their weapons at him. Sadly, none can hurt him now, as his plan was already complete. He just threw the heads of the raven in the fire along with some other prepared ingredient. The fire in front of him turned green, and some strange noises came out as if the hags were still screaming. This was one kind of the hedge magic that John picked up from observing the hags the last couple of months. Something that didn't need magicka but rather a sacrifice. As the screaming sounds started to settle, 3 points in the ground formed up and expanded like portals. From them, 3 foul creatures walked out. The creatures were large humanoids with crow heads and legs, with large black wings on their backs and sickles in their hands. They looked like a very advanced form of the Hagravens, but only John knew what these are. They are called Wraiths of Crows, and they come from the Daedric realm of Evergloam, Nocturnal's realm in Oblivion. Once those creatures appeared, the Reachmen froze at their places. Something so unfamiliar can bring confusion regardless of the situation. John, on the other hand, walked away with light steps. He may have summoned the Wraiths of Crows, but he has no power over them. These creatures were unbound, which means he will get attacked if he gets noticed. Screech. Sure enough, the creatures he summoned were powerful and didn't disappoint him. They viciously screeched and rushed at the first target they saw, the Forsworn. "Get rid of those. I want to rip him apart." Alaric was still enraged and rallied his men at the Daedric creatures. A fight started at the narrow path up, and the Wraiths of Crows proved to be too tough to. The Briarheart warriors were all stationed away from here, and there was no time. No one knew what John was planning next. Alaric was desperately fighting the creatures John summoned and seemed desperate. "Prince, there is no way down from up there. The Nord won't go anywhere." A man said. "No. There is a way down. The leap." "That's impossible. Damn it. We will buy you time, Prince." The man understood what leap Alaric was talking about. Bard's Leap Summit is high place on the Jarrow Mountains, and a place where a river flows down into a waterfall. On the edge of the waterfall, there was a walkway overlooking the whole reach. One can say it is a very high and steep place that walkway was on. Right now, John was standing on the edge of the walkway, and someone arrived behind him. John barely looked with half an eye before looking forward again. You murderous son of a bitch. I won't let you die if not by my hands." Alaric spoke to John with hate. "So far you are not doing a very good job," John mocked. "Even if you survive the leap, you won't go too far. We will drag you back and I will torture you to death. I swear on the name of my grandfather, King Madanak, that you won't get away from me." Alaric held Bloodskull and pointed it at John. "Madanak? Right, they call you Prince." John smiled vividly. He knew the king in rags, Madanak. He put many dots together now. "I will come for you, Blood Eagle." John left Alaric with those words. Don't you dare! Don't you dare jump down! Alaric was desperately trying to get his hands on John. John looked at Alaric disdainfully. Bitch! Dare is my surname. And I fly. John reached the end of the walkway and let himself fall. No! Alaric ran towards John only to see him falling, but not for long. Suddenly, a greed expanded on John's body and made a wingsuit. John glided outside of the forsworn camp to the Karth River. PayPal. PayPal. Me/Eldokmezi. Patreon remove. Patreon. com/Eldokmezi. Discord. Discord. GG/GKCKVA7. Chapter 338 Good New, Bad News. Just in case if you were wondering why I let John get captured, this chapter will explain everything. Extra chapter. Every new plus $10 patron or PayPal. Extra chapter. 5,000 vote. Extra chapter. 8,000 vote. Winterhold. Alina was still in a dazed state of what happened yesterday. She met someone, or something, that she never ever dreamt of meeting before. That was obviously Gleam. A part of the cult of Kine, that is known as Guardians of the Grove, and resided in Kinesgrove, had tales about a legendary godlike being that lives in the Eldergleam sanctuary who shown herself in history barely once or twice, but the tales are still there. Known to have some godlike powers, that being was always associated with Kine and the sanctuary was always treated as a sacred place. The origin of the name Eldergleam was unknown, but to think that the spirit of the tree itself was called Gleam. Well, Alina was petrified when she met Gleam. She fainted and woke up while being tended to by Gleam herself. Gleam was a very beautiful being with wide green eyes and brown hair surrounded by a mystic aura that can't belong to a mortal. Her petite appearance and curious wide eyes didn't reflect her true age of being the oldest known being on Tamriel. It was a traumatic experience in many ways. Alina was always a fangirl of the spirits of Nirn and dreamt that she can one day meet with one of those fairies. Still, the idea that the most ancient tree in the land was actually a fairy made Alina question the existence of the universe and the meaning of life. Still, the meeting wasn't all that bad. Alina benefited a lot by simply talking with Gleam. Out of all things in the world, Gleam knew about John and assured Alina that he is alive. More so, she explained Jeliner's situation to Alina and told her that the Twilight Rose is watching over both John and Jeliner. The Twilight Rose is of course the Daedric Prince Azura. Alina couldn't wait to fly back on Lochthar and spread the news in Winterhold, but she regained her sanity and started to think of how to decisively retrieve both John and Jeliner. Sadly, Gleam couldn't interfere with John's labor and started to explain the meaning of the labors to Alina. She was rather shocked when she learned that John bore such a burden alone without telling anyone. She knew about John facing a problem with some Daedric prince, and he said that he will resolve it, but for that to be Azura of all the Daedra. It was shocking. Azura can be argued to be one of the top dogs in Oblivion despite her benevolent image, and offending such a Daedra can worsen the relationship between Winterhold and the large population of dark elves that worship Azura. No wonder John kept the matter under the rugs. Worrying about him is pointless. He is already recovering his power and planning to get back at his enemies. If you want to go to him, I'll aid you. That was what Gleam said. Apparently, Gleam has taken a liking on both John and Alina, and she mentioned something about Nefertiti too being a similar race to hers. Alina couldn't make heads and tails of the way Gleam spoke in, but she couldn't help but worry about John and miss him. She wanted to be with him no matter the cost. You do not need to worry, Elder Gleam. I know John all right and will find a way to reach him. Alina said. Not with those eyes of yours. Don't you feel like losing control over the power you have? Gleam dropped a bomb on Alina's head. Alina was shocked and couldn't muster a word to reply with. Contrary to her expectation, Gleam offered help. The trinket that the boy made for you is quite useful, but you are getting more powerful. I can help. Please! Alina was desperate for help. It was true, her eyes got stronger and the firekeeper mask was barely suppressing her eye powers. Her eye may out of control and accidentally kill someone, that was how strong her eyes were. Very well. Gleam floated in the air, and flew to her body, which is the tree, then took a leaf and a branch. Careful! Alina was flustered as she saw someone break their own body. Here you go. Eat this. Gleam offered the leaf to Alina. Why am I thinking of All Might? What is that? What do you think it is, silly? A leaf. Isn't this awkward? Getting your hair, leaf eaten? Why is that? It happens all the time? Oh. Yes. I see you are a tree after all. Haha. A person and a tree. Why does that sound awkward all of a sudden? It was too much for Alina's brain, stress then shock and now confusion. It was exhausting. What will this leaf do? She asked. You will be carrying my presence on you, and that will be enough to make you powerful enough to stop the blessing of the Dreamweaver. Truly. Alina couldn't believe she is ridding herself from the curse on her eyes, even though Gleam just called it a blessing. It was true, if a blessing is too powerful then it is a curse. It is true. You can finally free yourself from the blindfold. Alina was thrilled to hear the news and agreed immediately. Once she ate the leaf, changes started to happen. She felt a strong surge of energy in her energy center. She sat down and started circulating her energy to consume it. Her pupils that were fixed in a vertical slit shape turned back to normal round pupils. Gleam kept watching what Alina was doing in wonder, and could tell that the leaf that she gave to Alina was being consumed at a rapid rate. While doing so, Alina's skin turned red and normal a few times in the span of a few hours until she opened her eyes again. She was mystified by the feeling. One leaf of the Elder Gleam shot her level to level 7, Jade Skin stage. This was really some unexpected harvest. She was not sure about her eyes, but jumping up a few levels in one day is something rare. As soon as she opened her eyes, she had to endure 1 hour of Gleam talking about various stuff. In the end, Gleam offered the branch she took with the leaf. It was a straight and big branch enough to craft a cane, but it is a branch from Elder Gleam herself. This was no ordinary branch. If Alina's guess is correct, this branch can break Wolfer's best swords. The Elder Gleam is in existence older than any metal on Nirn after all. It was impossible to harm it by normal means. What is this branch for? Alina asked. It is a branch? What do you mortals do with branches? Gleam asked. No idea. I think a bough can be a good choice. Oh, I see, you are not the creative one. Fine, take it to the boy and he will have an idea what to do with it. Tell him it is a gift. To John, fine. Alina thanked Gleam 1,000 times and headed off the sanctuary holding the branch and the firekeeper mask in her hands like a kid going out of a toy store. Once Lochthar saw her, he landed but kept looking at her with hesitation. It was the first time he sees his owner in the eye, so the griffin was still trying to rope its bird brain around the situation. Alina decided to turn the firekeeper mask into the storm rage crown. It still can amplify her magic and eye powers greatly. Hopping on Lochthar's back, she flew back to Winterhold. This all happened yesterday, and she can accept it with an open mind. She arrived at Winterhold late and went to bed as no one was up when she came home, but when she woke up, why on Nirn was there a tiny Gleam sleeping next to her? Between the Reach and Falkreath holds Black Bone Clan hidden cave. Screams and wails echoed as blood and guts spilled on the ground. Many men were holding their shields up trying to protect the others behind them who controlled the undead. The Black Bone Clan was being invaded and its men were being slaughtered. None in the Black Bone Clan could ever think that their family that held on for thousands of years and thrived in the late 200 years would face annihilation on this day. Their defenses crumbled and their ancestral cave was besieged. The women and children managed to sneak away from the back of the cave, and the men had to buy enough time for them to escape. Ever since that chaos started in the Reach 3 months ago, those bloody firemen were bound to appear to look for their relative, John Dare. Still, not in anyone's wildest dreams could they imagine the most infamous fireman to come knocking on their door without even asking questions. It was her. The worst living killer among the clans, the bloody Hilda. What brought that nightmare here? Hilda was infamous with her bloodthirst. She killed many people following the events of the chase that Skyrim's clans cooperated with the Thalmor after her. Her vengeance was bloody, and she dyed the sea with blood for 5 years until the firemen themselves had to put an end to it. Following these events, she was said that she has put down her axe and settled somewhere at the end of the world, yet here she is, as bloody as 12 years ago, and with her battle-axe at hand and her infamous crew that has sworn a blood oath to serve her and her family at her back. She was that famous. The only reason why they can think she would come for them was because of the attack they initiated at the firemen's with blood sails more than a year ago. It was John Dare who managed to sabotage their plans back then, so it was natural that they wanted vengeance, and so they were visited by the firemen. Rolf Blackbone, you know why I am here. Hilda spoke and her voice echoed. An elderly man wearing armor stepped forwards from the ranks of the defenders, and the skirmish was halted. Bloody Hilda, I know why you are here. We don't have the fireman boy. Leave us, damn you. The man replied. If you don't have him, then you know where he is. Why on earth did you mobilize your clansmen the day he disappeared? You are into that plot. Who's after it, you pile of old bones? Hilda had her own scenario into her head. We didn't ambush they boy. We don't even have business with him. Ask the Forsworn, we only moved because they moved. Rolf Blackbone was desperate. He knew the result of the fight. Don't make me get you, Blackbone. Say it or I am sending you all here to oblivion. Lord Molag Bal as my witness. I didn't even know anything. Rolf swore in his god's name. The Blackbone clan was a Daedra-worshipping hidden clan after all. Much like cults but less harmful because of the blood bonds that tie them. I don't care about your Daedra. Swear to me on your son's life. As she said so, Hilda's crew dragged a warrior in his 30s right beside Hilda. It was Rolf's son, Jor. He was accompanying the women and children who escaped the siege. No. Rolf's face turned ashen pale, not trying to think of what happened to his clansmen that escaped. Sorry, father. I got captured, the rest escaped. You filthy firemen! Raising his sword, Rolf didn't care anymore and ran towards Hilda. She clicked her tongue and threw Jor away to face Rolf. Only 3 exchanges were enough to kill the old fool. Hilda was depressed as she found no clue from the Black Bones. Last chance, whoever knows anything will save your doomed clan, Hilda said, looking at the Black Bones. The Black Bones' blood was boiling once their patriarch died. They didn't withstand the shame and raised their weapons one. For the patriarch. Save Jor. Kill that bloody woman. They all charged at Hilda and her crew at once. Damn you! Hilda knew that she is now fighting a cornered beast and readied herself for a hard fight, but suddenly, a fire stream came from behind them and landed on the Black Bones, burning them in one go. Screams and cries filled the place as the men were burned to ash, and the ones who survived ran for their lives. Hilda looked behind her to see a large man in black cloak and hood with a flaming sword standing behind her crew. Leave us! With one word from that man, Hilda's crew dispersed in a few seconds. Hilda, go home. You are just killing people. The man spoke. Hilda's face hardened and she shook her head. You can't stay here. You just gave birth a few months ago. Thor and I need you. I am not. She wanted to say something but she stopped. Her heart finally found happiness and she can't give it up that easily. Jonrad, I can't. The bloody beast from a while ago turned into a meek woman in front of her husband. Jonrad shook his head with a sigh. You can't do anything like that. You are just starting fights, not looking for clues. Let Tyr and I handle that. We already have a lead. Really? Yeah. Merchants gave us a tip. A large man was seen jumping from a summit inhabited by Forsworn into a river. They say he flew for a bit before landing in the river, then forcing one of them off a horse and taking it deep in the reach. You know who loves to jump from high places so much, don't you? It's John Hilda. Our son is okay and jumping off mountains. Johnrad smiled as he pulled Hilda to his embrace and kissed her head. She was tearful for a bit, but she listened to him and walked with him out of the black bone cave. Still, they made a single mistake. A very big one. They didn't check for survivors, and sure as hell, there was one. Jor, son of Rolf Blackbone, was hiding under the rubble behind some corpses. PayPal. Me/Eldokmizi. Pat Rayon, remove. Pat Rayon. com/Eldokmizi. Discord. GG/GKCKVA7. Chapter 339 Unwanted Visitor. Extra Chapter. Every new plus $10 patron or PayPal. Extra Chapter. 5,000 vote. Extra Chapter. 8,000 vote. Winterhold. She walked to the large manor across the street, but no one recognized her right away. Many things are very different about her now. She is determined rather than gloomy, she is confident rather than hesitant, and she is hiding her face no more. Alina was brimming with life and power. "Ollie, your eyes!" As soon as Bjorna saw Alina, she hid her face with her palms, knowing the damage that can be done by one look from Alina's eyes. Alina smiled and held Bjorna's arm away. The two met eye to eye and Bjorna gasped. Your eyes are fine? There is no gods. It is true, I no longer need to hide my eyes, Alina said, smiling. My God! Come here, you are so beautiful. I missed that face. Bjorna pulled Alina in a hug right away and invited her in. Sviti came and greeted Alina, who she couldn't recognize right away. Wolfer, how is he? He still doesn't want to come out? Alina asked. He is drunk. Bjorna, Sviti, I need him back on his feet in an hour. We are holding a meeting in the headquarters with the heads. We have an update on John and we need to plan. I am done sitting around and waiting. Truly, Alina? You found him? No, but I have a solid lead. Wolfer controls most of the force and I need him to take action with me. We are going to get John no matter what. We have an hour? Fine, I'll manage, Bjorna said and ran in. Alina was willing to take action, no matter what the consequences. The elders from the Firemane and the Moonblade clans told her to stay put and be patient, but it has been 3 months already and every enemy of John and the company was already rejoicing in joy. Also, not moving for 3 months was already a mistake. The morale in Winterhold was low and everyone wanted to ensure the future. Alina strode out of Wolfer's manor and has already made her mind. Her beautiful, determined face started to attract a lot of attention in the street. Her style of dresses was what she was famous for in the city, and those who saw her face for the first time could already tell that this is the lady of House Dare. She headed to the company's headquarters and started to ready the plans she made for the campaign. John's title as a Thane gives him the privilege of commanding a force of 200 men outside his hold. No one said what kind of troops these will be, so Alina decided to make the best of it and call out the elites of the company. She also had one more card at her hand, but she decided to wait for the right time. The heads of the departments started to show up one after the other. Ongium, captain of the Dare fleet. Ilishka, head of the Dare trading. Trudvar, John's housecarl and acting overseer of the Dare essentials. Commander of the Dare Corps was John, and now Alina was the acting commander. The one who was still late was chief of the Dare arsenal, Wolfer. They all waited for Wolfer in a cold atmosphere, but suddenly, Sev, the secretary of John, ran in and whispered something to Alina. Her face twisted immediately. Ships from the Imperial Legion have requested to enter the docks, Alina announced. What? We didn't expect any ship from them anytime soon. What kind of ship? Angium frowned. A diplomat ship and a ship carrying the banner of the East Empire Company. None understood the reason for the sudden visit. We should receive them. I am going to the docks. Alina stood up and headed out. The other heads naturally followed her. Down the slope in the shade of the College of Winterhold, the people of the Dare Dragon Company gathered behind Alina. She, who was finally showing her face around, gathered all attention and stood out the most. The two ships docked at the same time, but the East Empire Companies docked faster and could be seen trying to cross the way of the other ship. Once it docked, a figure jumped down fast on a rope ladder. It was Vittoria Vici. As her feet touched the pier, she turned towards Winterhold's people and strode right away until she saw Alina and paused for a second. Her head worked fast and she figured out Alina's identity, then walked towards her with an awkward face. Alina too didn't like Vittoria and kept looking haughtily at her. Miss Moonblade. Miss Vici. The atmosphere was a bit tense, but it seemed that Vittoria had something to say. I just heard some news from Solitude and came right away from the city of Blacklight. This is about Thane John's company and it is urgent. Vittoria approached Alina and whispered something to her. Alina's cool was disturbed, and she was about to break into anger, but she managed to hold it all in. She kept glaring at the other ship, as if trying to sink it with her eyes, which was not completely impossible for her. Indeed, as people from the other ship landed, the atmosphere became way tenser than it already is. Even Vittoria stood beside the people of Winterhold and kept looking at the ones who came. A few imperial gentlemen walked down from the ship staggering after a seemingly long journey and faced Alina and her people. They saw Alina and held their breath for some time before mustering the courage to walk forward and talk to the representatives of Winterhold. An elderly man took the lead of the envoys and spoke. "Hello, I presume you are from the Dare Dragon Company. I am Surus Loch, an officer from the Imperial Guild of Commerce. We are here to deliver the issued license for the Dare Dragon Company. The chief executive officer of your company has applied for a license, and here it is. Will he please receive it or send a representative to receive it in his stead?" The man said, taking out a large scroll of paper that has many words written on it and marked with many seals. "This is indeed a legit license that all the traders would die to have, a license that transforms the company from a small entity that operates in a limited space to a large-scale company that can operate all around the empire." Something like that was a thing John always sought after. But Alina knew better. This is a double-edged sword. It can broaden the limits of the company, but it will put a certain limit that she could sniff coming. She looked at the man and spoke. "I am the representative of the Dare Dragon Company, and Thane John Dare of Winterhold. My beloved is absent at the moment, and by the legal authorities he left for me. I wish that the company receives that license on a later date. Now if you excuse me," Alina said and turned around. This was the right thing to do, not accepting the license. "I am afraid that is not possible." A voice spoke and Alina stopped. The accent was Nordic, which was quite unusual for a Nord to keep company with the Imperials. Alina looked at whoever spoke and her eyes narrowed. The man stepped forward, but she didn't recognize him, however. Others like Vittoria Vici and Alishka did recognize the man really well. All those who recognized the man looked at him with hate and contempt. Vittoria spoke his name so that Alina can hear it. "Erikr." Just one word was enough to cause Alina to almost go berserk. She turned around and looked at the man who masterminded John's demise, and anger swelled in her. Opposite to her, Erikr looked at Alina with dirty eyes full of lust. Around him, there was a few Imperial soldiers with a high-ranking legionnaire. This situation was already planned for. Erikr came with enough people to force his way in Winterhold. Still, Alina was not the person who would care for such a thing. Seeing Erikr's ugly mug was enough for her natural red eyes to be even redder and her eye powers to go out of control and assault Erikr. Thud. Buff. Aa. It burns. Stop. My eyes. The force that was released from her eyes was too overpowering that Erikr fell on his knees and started quivering in pain and screaming in agony. The pain was so great that blood started to come from his nose, ears and eyes, and the vines of his neck were all stretching out and turning black. No one needed a clue to understand what is going on. The glow of Alina's eyes was visible to everyone. The legionnaire beside Erikr was the first to react and stood between Alina and Erikr. It was of no use though, as Alina can see through things and Erikr can escape the torture. Stop, by the order of the Empire. You are assaulting a member of an Imperial envoy. You are under arrest. The legionnaire whose rank was captain took out his sword and pointed it at Alina, but without an answer. Alina was simply enjoying the agony she was inflicting on Erikr. I said, stop. The legionnaire was enraged and he stepped towards at Alina waving his sword. Slash. Swash. In a split of a second, the sword fell from the hand of the legionnaire captain along with the arm that carried it. Aya! The man couldn't withstand the pain and fell screaming. In front of him was the object that cut his arm. It was a hatchet. A mere old hatchet descended on his arm and cleanly cut the arm down. Only one man in Winterhold can do that. Alina stopped what she was doing and looked at whoever threw it. It was indeed Wulfr. He walked forward with a wrathful face and stood beside Alina. You okay, sister-in-law? Alina nodded. He turned around and kicked the Imperial captain away, then walked to Erikr. Why is that weasel not in prison? Wasn't he supposed to be judged by the High King? He asked. He has connections in the Imperial Guild of Commerce. He was bailed out by a plea from the guild. Vittoria Vici replied. *spat Imperial dogs. Wulfr spat at Erikr and kicked his guts. The Imperial soldiers who were supposed to be protecting Erikr were all pushed back by the raw presence of Alina and Wulfr. The two were trained by John and were refined to the top state a human can reach. Hell, as a level 3 Jade Skin stage and a level 7 Jade Skin stage, both of them were already superhumans with a lifespan that may reach 500 years. The strongest two in Winterhold were already that angry. Erikr was completely exposed to the wrath of those two, but he could still resist fainting in the spot. Compared to them, John's pressure that he experienced was way scarier. You can't stop this, too late, ha. Even if you kill me, I already won, and you will be hunted as murderers. Erikr was carrying a hint of madness in his eyes. He is so close to destroying John's empire, and he can't back down now even if oblivion was the cost. Miss Vici, please explain to your friends. Mr. Erikr is a guild officer. Officer Surus Loch. Vittoria didn't want to get involved in this particular point. She was an ally to the Dare Dragon Company, and has a lot of investments, so she was wholeheartedly on the same boat as them. If the purpose of Erikr was achieved, it will cause her a big loss and her position in the East Empire Company will be threatened. Explain yourself, she replied. Very well. Surus Loch spoke. The Dare Dragon Company is already registered in the guild, so we will, by all means, protect its interests. Protect? Elishka questioned with a mocking face. Indeed, the company's interests are the guild's interests. The company controls a massive domain that can be said to monopolize 1/9 of Skyrim. This means that the company's worth is over 500,000 septim. Any company with such a worth should have a proper manager, such as Thane John Dare, who has a title equal to a military viscount. Now that Thane John is absent for more than 2 months, he is presumed dead. It is by law that the guild appoints an acting director to the company with a noble title to oversee the ins and outs of such an organization. Thane Erikr volunteered to help the Dare Dragon Company, and the guild has agreed. Officer Surus Loch spoke while being wary. Still, there was no way to sugarcoat what he said just now. The people gathered around turned pale. Handing John's company to his enemies? This was a blunt declaration of war. The Empire was clearly trying to get back to Winterhold with all what it got. Wulfr was enraged and was about to kill Erikr where he is, but it was Alina who stopped him. I see. Very well. She spoke quietly and stepped up. Everyone around her was in cold sweat. This may be the end of either the peaceful Winterhold or the prosperous Winterhold. It is either a clash with the Empire or submission. Now Alina was making that decision. I am already the legal agent and representative of Thane John Dare. Will this help my claim? She handed out something to Officer Surus. He looked at the object with wide eyes and open mouth, then nodded. Yes, it does, my lady. Shall I record it? By all means. Something different was happening. Alina seemed to have used some sort of a trump card. Mr. Surus, what is that? What is going on? Erikr, who was kneeling on the ground under Wulfr's foot, felt that something was wrong. Old man Surus looked at him and switched sides with Winterhold right away. Sorry, Mr. Erikr. Your presence is no longer necessary. Surus Loch sold Erikr right away for his safety. Erikr was to blame after all. Alina took the object back from Officer Surus. It was a metal badge made of ebony steel. Erikr's eyes were glued on it. Take that mongrel to the Black Room, Alina said while pointing at Erikr. Wulfr pulled him up from his hair and Alina came closer and put the badge in front of Erikr's face. See that? John was always a step ahead of everyone. With this, I will make you my bitch. Alina's vulgar words and classy tone negated each other, but her eyes were enough to express her rage. Erikr's eyes were still glued on the badge. It had an inscription of Winterhold's coat of arms and a text under it that said, Alina Moonblade, Thane of Winterhold. PayPal. Me/Eldokmizi. Patreon, remove. Patreon. com/Eldokmizi. Discord. GG/GKCKVA7. Chapter 340 Unexpected Help. An extra was supposed to be published last week for 5,000 K-vote. Well, here it is. Also, a sponsored character returns today. All that time you were a Thane? Sviti asked. John foresaw some trouble happening in his absence, and talked with Jarl Career to give me the title. Mama has to watch the house when Baba is out. Ha, I see. So, Lady Boss, what is the plan? Elishka questioned. Alina took a deep breath before answering that and looked at the people in front of her. There were all the key figures of Winterhold. Before we start, we have some matters to address. Just a while ago, we took the people of the Imperial Guild of Commerce to the Jarl's Keep and signed all the necessary papers. The legal office in our company has gone through the agreements and we are good to go. Still, the situation with the Imperials this time was worse than predicted. They tried to push Erikr on us so that Winterhold fall into their hands and they manipulate the affairs with the company. It was one dirty move indeed, even though they were bound to fail. Our company is deeply rooted in the hold and our inner system that John came up with ensures that no one can ever hinder us except whipping us all out. Therefore, we need to respond to this move the Empire took. Being the behemoth they are, I don't have a clue how to get back at them. Wulfr, how do you think John would respond in our situation? Alina directed a very important question to Wulfr of all people. He is the only one who can understand John, and they completely trust each other. John appears to be rational and likes to play fair, but that's only a facade. John is obsessed with being in control and gives the opponent the illusion of having a chance of winning before completely shredding them to pieces and doing a wired dancing over their corpses. Wulfr said so with a remorseful smile. He gave the Empire many chances to get on his good side, but they always tried to bite his ass. I asked him once about the reason why he doesn't have a bad feeling regarding the Empire and avoiding Ulfric. He said the influential Nords who sided with the Empire are somehow good people. We have Jarl Balgruuf, Jarl Idgrod, King Torrig, while some are just some arrogant fucks. On the other hand, the ones who sided with Ulfric are either incompetent jarls like Layla Lawgiver or fanatics like Skald the Elder. The difference between the two sides is that the Nords who sided with the Empire think of the big picture, even though the Empire itself is rotten to the core, while the ones on the side of Jarl Ulfric are mostly rotten themselves. I say we can't make such a big decision without Jon, but if you want to harass the Imperials, you can just give them the cold face. How so? Make trouble with them and lessen the supplies we send to their fort. If they sent anyone for explanting, lock them in the Black Room. If they caused trouble, kick them out of the fort. Alina nodded. You are right, making their life harder is a good start. Sev, that captain whose arm was cut by Wulfr, news on him? Alina asked Sev. Yes, my lady. He was taken by a legion priest to get his arm reattached. Then deliver this order to not let any legionnaire into town even for medicine. Yes. Trudvar, our newest inmate in the Black Room, that slime Erikr, I don't want him out even if the Aetherius and Nirn collapsed on each other. And assign him that Redguard torturer that Jon talked about. It already happened, my lady. The torturer requested some special items for the torture, and we are gathering the inventory for him. Special items? Like knives, razors, and poisons? Alina asked. No, it was some flowers, butterflies, a drawing of a Bosmare girl and a narwhal tusk. Trudvar said. Huh? My reaction exactly. Still, Boss would always give the Redguard whatever he asks for. The guy is effective and clean, still, no one understands what he does. Some say that those who he tortures lose the bright of their eyes and remain silent forever. Trudvar explained. Alina was still having a hard time understanding how can torture happen with such strange tools. I am not sure what to expect from the first 3 items, but I don't want to know what will happen with the narwhal tusk. If you catch my drift. Angium shuddered in cold sweat. Fine, fine. With that out of the way, we can finally start our business. Alina clapped her hands and changed the subject. First off, I need to tell you how my eyes are back to normal. It is all related to Jon. Alina started telling an edited story about how she met a spiritual being that helped her recover and told her of Jon's status. She was also given the means to find him. This is fantastic news. My lady, whatever it is, we will do it. Angium spoke. Thank you, Captain. We need to gather our best and head out to the Reach. I am sure Jon will make his own ruckus, and we will find him right away. Alina said. Didn't the elders say we should stay put? The gloomy Wulfr asked. Alina glared at him. Screw that. They don't even have the guts to order Jon around, and they want to order me? No, I am done being everyone's favorite girl, and I am doing what I have to do for Jon and for Winterhold. In case you're not getting the image in my mind for Alina, she talks like Anna Henrietta from Witcher 3, so fucking class. Wulfr nodded and didn't say anything. Now, let's focus on the problems we at hand. As Jon's representative, I can mobilize 200 men under his name, and as Thane myself, I can mobilize 200. This is 400 in total. I don't want to leave Winterhold unguarded, so I want to have the best combination of soldiers. Any suggestions? My lady, according to what we know, the Reach is a rocky area with many twisted roads and hidden caves. Horses won't serve us much, so we can't take our cavalry. We certainly need our heavy troops and light troops, so I suggest a combination of both. Trudvar said. I see. What are the numbers we have? Alina asked. My lady, only the boss knew, and he kept making many camps in different places, so no one can know the exact number of our forces. What we can tell is that we have already surpassed the limit of 1,000 men in our mercenary corps, and if anyone found out the real number of our troops, the company is going to be in trouble. Elishka said. Wait, we have more than a 1,000. Yes, the boss kept them in many places and under different jobs than mercenaries like guardsmen, local militia and caravan guards. He said that only the commanders know how many they control, and there is only one person other than him knew the total number the company can mobilize. Trudvar said. Alina could think of only one person. She looked straight to Wulfr. Wulfr nodded and took out a file and passed it to Alina. She looked at what's inside and barely kept a poker face. Hey, was John trying to participate in some war? She thought. In front of her, the file contained details about the different teams of the Dare Corps and their commanders. In total, Alina was introduced to the real power of the company. To summarize it, it was an army and a navy. The Dare fleet consists of 1 dragon ship, which is the flagship Queen Potima's Revenge, 8 cruiser ships, which are Roaring Flame, Thunder Wrath, Iron Maiden, Winter Grace, Bloody Witch, Sea Ghost, Knife Head, and Hasty Bee, 25 gunboats named by numbers, and all that was powered by a total 800 sailors known as the Dare Marines. She looked at Ongium, who controlled all that number, and he smiled shyly. That man was not only a good friend of John but also can control all that large number on his own. Still, the wonders didn't end here. The Dare Corps was much more diverse. It had the infantry known as Team 1 armed with spears, swords and shields and called the Dare Troopers. Their number was 2,000 under the command of Wulfr. The mages, known as Team 2, are armed with fireball, lightning strike and frost orb spells and called the Dare Cannoneers. Their numbers was 200 under her lead. The shooters of Team 3 armed with lever-action crossbows called Dare Arbalists. Their number was 1,000 under the lead of Housecarl Trudvar. Team 4 was consisted of the cavalry known as Dare Dragoons, whose number was 800 under John's personal lead. And finally Team 0 under Julliner's lead, and their information were classified. The total was around 5,000 unit. Just how in Oblivion do we keep all that fed? Alina was facing her first test as a leader of how to stay composed in front of this ridiculous power. Of course, none of that was as large as Imperial Legion or the Stormcloak Alliance, but the quality of the troops was always something John made sure of. If the information on the file was true, then many of these troops have already learned the Bat Spirit arts and studied martial arts. John was not the one who would shy out in terms of teaching. Of course, he would keep the super-powerful spells and techniques to himself, but he would be generous and distributed a variety of battle spirit training manuals of the different bootcamp. He even made many logistic and support teams as well as battle simulations and how to mix the teams together. In battle, the teams wouldn't go fight on their own but would mix themselves as one greater army because it is impossible to fight with one kind of soldiers. In the end, even if 100 Erikr tried to take over the company, the troops can simply put Winterhold a hole on the lockdown and completely take over Winterhold. Was the Empire trying to take over Winterhold because they know about the company's power, or did they try to take over because they didn't know? The answer makes 2 completely different situations. By the looks of it, John kept Winterhold free of spies by inviting all the spy organizations that can fill the blanks and managing them himself. So the chance of the Empire knowing anything about that was low. Still, the power didn't exist to be hidden. One day that power will have to come out to the light and new rules will be put. Alina sighed and put down the files. Thanks, Wulfr, she said. Now that we have more than what we need, we should think of how to mobilize at least 400 soldiers to the Reach. As I said before, John's badge and mine afford that number, so I am taking the liberty assembling a force consisted of 50 cannoneer, 100 arbalist and 250 troopers. Team 0 will scout and do its usual work as we expect it to do, and the supply line will be secured from our outpost in Whiterun. John Battleborn will see to it. It is all good and fine, my lady, but we either have to move by land or by sea. By sea will take a long time, and we have to land in Solitude to reach the Karth River. Landing in Solitude will make us go through 1,000 inspections by the Imperial Legion, and an unauthorized landing will make the Empire look for trouble with us right away. We can move by land, and the best way is to go through the Pale. The only problem is that Jarl Skald of Dawnstar won't let us pass, and we may need to move by force, costing us people and time. It is your choice, my lady. Trudvar said. It is as you said, Housecarl Trudvar. I will handle that. Wolfer spoke out. Elaborate? Alina asked. Angium and I will handle Jarl Skald. You will pass without a problem through the Pale. Wolfer said. Fine, we'll discuss your plan together. Alina agreed once she saw the determined look on Wolfer's face. With that, I think everyone knows what to do. Your files all contain your duties. Please be. Excuse me, my lady. Sev, the secretary, came from outside and interrupted Alina. What is it? A man came from Morrowind. He said he is friends with Boss John, and he heard of his capture. He said he can help. What is his name? Lanmas Sutter. Lanmas Sutter is a sponsored character by Matthew Landon. Lanmas Sutter, of course Alina remembered the name. He is a Nord of Clan Sutter of the Rift. He was a person captured by the Blood Horkers and got freed by John in last battle against them. He works in Morrowind and promised he would repay John one day for saving him. Fine, Sev. I will see him. Alina moved from the conference table to the main large office and sat behind it surrounded by Wolfer and Trudvar. Lanmas Sutter entered the office and greeted Alina right away. Crimson Moon of the great clan Moonblade, greetings. Lanmas of the ancient clan Sutter, it is a pleasure. Please sit. Alina greeted a fellow member of the hidden clan who was on the good side of her clan. Sutter clan is mostly involved with the drama and focuses its power on the trade with Morrowind and Black March. I will go straight to the subject. Thane John saved my life, and my clan sent me news of his disappearance in the Reach while I was in Mournhold. My employer agreed to let me come and help. She also gave me an item that can help greatly and said that the company can use it to mobilize a lot of power. Lanmas said and put a box in front of Alina. Alina hesitated for a bit, but she took the box and opened it. Inside it, there was a large seal that seemed to befit of a royal court. That seal carried the insignia of the Empire and another insignia of a tilted scale. Alina knew what it meant. This is a royal seal ordered by Emperor Tiber Septim to be given to the great house Hlalu of Morrowind. The holder of that seal can go through any Imperial Legion inspection without a hitch and can even request aid from the Legion. My employer said that she will lend it to the company until Thane John is found. Lanmas said. Alina looked with wide eyes to the seal, and then looked at Lanmas. She remembered hearing the name of his employer once, but she can't remember it exactly. I am sorry, who was your employer again? Alina asked. Lanmas smiled and rested his back to his seat. She is called the Old Woman of Mournhold. Chapter 341 Hedge Magic. Hun Call Zeolwar, Call of Valor, at G0LB0 R has been summoned from Sovngarde. Gods, that crazy man returned. Look at him, all blood and guts. He did it again, didn't he? That crazy man. He's insane. Don't look to him in the eye. Why allowing such a man in town? He clearly enjoys killing. What if he goes berserk on the people? Shut up, woman. This man was hurt by the Hagravens and has a grudge on them. They say he attacks Hag Covens and kill those Briarheart warriors they make. He is making the Reach a safer place. Are you seriously thinking that way? Well, after the trouble those nasty Forsworn started 3 months ago, all the traders are fearful to come to Markarth and the prices went up. At least he is teaching the Forsworn their place. The uproar of the people of Markarth was clearly about the man known as the Witch Hunter. A large man carrying a hammer who goes out every morning to hunt down the Forsworn camps around Markarth. This was obviously John. It has been a week since his head concussion was fully healed and he became able to speak and shout again. He still doesn't overdo it that much. Anyway, since that day, John quit from the smelter and took Wolfer's hammer, the champion's cudgel, which he retook from the corpse of Grosh, and started hunting down the small Forsworn camps around the Reach. There is an ear bounty for every Forsworn killed and many head bounties for known Forsworn leaders and Hagravens. Ear bounty is when a bounty hunter kills a nameless bandit and returns with their ears as proof. Head bounty is when a bounty hunter brings back the head of a known wanted. John was infamous for his daily bounty hunting that seemed to be scaring even the Nords. He always returns covered in blood and carrying a head or two with him while appearing to be really injured by many arrows sticking on him and a lot of burn marks covering his arms. The truth wasn't completely far from that. John's aim was to gather as many materials as he can get to use magic once again. He had a few ideas on how to remove the vine around his torso, but the damn thing proved to be a true leech. It fed on John's blood and evolved into something absurd, and became bound by soul with John. Still, John didn't have the power to command it around only because he was already sealed by the vine. It was very annoying. John almost tried everything the past week to exert enough power to control the vine from the Thursday to the hedge magic put all proved futile because John's core power is locked down and it was the key out of this problem. In the end, these annoying vines are just a part of John exactly like greed. Yet they don't follow John's will because he still hasn't established authority over it. Was a nasty thing to deal with. John advanced through the town and mixed among the crowd until he reached Understone Keep, Markarth's center of power. He showed the bounty paper to the guards and someone came for him. Krylin, good job today. Feline, the Jarl's housecarl, came personally to greet the court's favorite mercenary. Here are the things. John handed over the ears and the head he has. Let's see. Man, that sure is a lot. Good job. Here is the bounty, don't spend it all in one place. Thanks, John said and turned away. He was keeping his face and identity hidden to not attract enemies. Krylin is his dragon priest mask name, and he kept his face under a hood. Feline surely has seen him in the Blue Palace, as she was accompanying Jarl Igmund of Markarth. Anyway, after he got the payment, he headed straight to the Silverblood Inn. Inside his room, there were many things that can make Nords go insane. John may have lost the ability to cast magic or release energy, but that is not what is magic all about. Magic has other forms like enchanting, alchemy, shouting, meditating, sword singing, chanting and many other forms. John may be an expert when it comes to casting, shouting and enchanting, but he is also knowledgeable when it comes to finding absurd ways to make magic. Right now, John was practicing the hedge magic. He was focusing on the sacrificial magic, as of late, and tried to accumulate power to himself by killing enemies. He made a soul-trapping weapon and started practicing on the Forsworn he was hunting. The results were rather disappointing. Sacrificing requires a connection with a higher being that the ritual of sacrifice is dedicated to by exchanging the sacrificed souls that the Daedra desire with power and energy. John had no pact with any higher being that accepts sacrifices. He knows some Daedra on a personal level, but still, Azura made it very clear that she doesn't accept mortal sacrifices. Sheogorath is not the one to do such a boring thing. Vermina seeks suffering so mortal are preferred alive in her book, and Herson is the god patron of the Forsworn. Not too many options here for sacrifice. Other than sacrifice, John discovered a new aptitude growing in him once he broke through the Ebon Blood stage. This aptitude was none other than the blood magic. What is blood magic? It is unstudied magic that gets classified under the hedge magic. The only reason why it is not studied is that it requires talent. In John's case, he developed his blood by breaking through the Ebon Blood stage and awakening that talent. Jenna Firemane, John's grandmother, is a known user of the blood magic as well as some vampires. With a wide variety of uses, the archetypes of the blood magic can be summarized as human body manipulation, vitality manipulation, mind manipulation, marking, curses, and sometimes enchanting. John could only think of how stupid he was to leave his limbs behind in the Briarheart Grove where he cut them. Using the blood magic on them can lead the Forsworn to him or worse, put a curse on him. Luckily, he killed all the Hagravens in Alaric's camp. There was one more type of hedge magic that John used rather well. He didn't know a proper name to it, but he called it fate magic. Such as the name, it was an extremely dangerous and a very obscure magic. John used it to escape the Forsworn when he burned the heads of the Hagravens, and 3 wraiths of crows appeared. This was not something he fully intended to. He didn't know such a creature would appear from the start, but he used the heads of the Hagravens, a medium of power, to call forth a guardian entity from oblivion. Due to the similarities between Hagravens and the wraiths of crows combined with the will of John, all offered to a fire powered by a soul gem he found at the Hagravens' nest, the fate magic worked out. John can say that fate magic is rather an ironic and a naughty one that can never be fully harnessed or completely understood. It depends on the way of performing a certain ritual combined with the will of the caster and a power source. Its downside is the complete randomity of the results and the chance of backfiring splendidly. The last type of hedge magic John researched was the chanting magic or the singing rituals. Although not as dangerous as the fate magic, the changing magic needs years upon years of understanding. How so? Well, to use the magic is to sing, and to sing one needs a listener. The listener, in that case, is not the higher beings like the original spirits, but on the contrary, it is the normal and the lesser spirit. Known as fairies or fae, spirits are beings that reached a certain maturity regarding the magical aptitude enough to cause mutation in their souls, evolving them to a different being. For example, a lesser soul being like a tree or an animal went through some fortuitous encounter and gained more power than it should. There is a chance that this power causes an evolution by affecting the soul and upgrading it, causing the creature to gain consciousness and a higher awareness of its own. That awareness is translated in more complicated thoughts that need to be addressed by a language, and it is known as the fairy language, which can be different from a fairy to another in many cases. The chanting magic is used to contact the fairies by speaking words they understand and ask them to aid the chanter. John saw that chanting magic twice. Once by Alina when they were healing Jeliner's eye, and Alina contacted the spirits of the Eldergleam sanctuary to give them enough power that can heal Jeliner. The second time was with the Hagravens, who kept singing to the evil fae in order to do divination of some sort. John clearly observed the way they sang, or rather screeched with their nasty voices to call forth some sort of energy. In that late night, John summarized all the sorts of the hedge magic he discovered and put theories to. As an arcane theorist, his work was rather scientific and put the hedge magic in a form that the world hasn't seen before. In such a predicament, John discovered a new magic for himself to toy with. The hedge magic contains sacrificial magic, blood magic, fate magic, and chanting magic. The sacrificial magic needs a connection with a higher power that desires sacrifices and willing to exchange it with power. The blood magic needs the ability to cast or enchant, not useful in battle. The fate magic is too risky, and to perform one spell, one needs a ton of preparations beforehand. The chanting magic needs a bond with a spirit as well as understanding its language. John closed the note in front of him with a grim face. He may have put an advanced theory that tops anything in the world regarding the hedge magic based on nothing but observation, but he lacked every requirement to use that magic effectively. Damn it! He was clearly not pleased of his lacking of power, or so he thought. Chapter 342, See No Evil, Speak No Evil, Hear No Evil. Extra Chapter, Every New plus $10, Patron or PayPal. Extra Chapter, 5,000 vote. Extra Chapter, 8,000 vote. Another day in the purgatory, John took the hammer, put on the armor, donned the camouflage cloak, prepared the arrows and checked with greed. Everything was in place. Last thing was the hood over his head and the key to his room. Mr. Krylon. The residents of the opposite room last night said they heard something. The innkeeper came to nag to him again. Again with them? John rolled his eyes. The people staying in the room opposite to his were causing him trouble once again. They seemed to be displeased with staying opposite to him. If you want me out of the room, then prepare one away for me. I'll pay you up. John settled it with money. Even when he was stranded alone, he made money like nothing. No, mister. They left the room. I think you are starting to cause us losing customers. Fine, I'll rent the other room too. John took off a few gold coins and stuffed them in the hand of the man. A hateful place it was. Markarth was the least city John liked in Skyrim. Even Windhelm wasn't that bad. John took off and headed outside the city again. He picked some bounty from the inn on the way out and took the road where it leads him. This time, the contract was around Kolskeggr mine, a gold mine owned by Markarth, and the Silverblood family has no business with, so it is not protected by them. It was natural for the Forsworn to attack it by then. John had an understanding of the politics in Markarth and how the hidden waters ran. His target was the Forsworn and their leader, even though there was no way the sacrifice magic he was studying would pay off. He had nothing else to do other than clashing with the Forsworn. According to what Azura said, his cure to get his power back was in the reach. Reason and logic were not that helpful to translate Azura's words. He needed to find a clue to get rid of that accursed vine. John traveled all the way to the mine and kept watching it from outside. If there are Forsworn inside, then they should be keeping a lookout. To avoid being spotted, John decided to not enter from the front. It was simply impossible, as Kolskeggr mine had only one way to go in or out. John's idea was to walk on the mountain above the mine using greed. He climbed from the back of the mountain, then stuck greed on the slope above the mine's entrance and started walking down on the wall of the mountain. It wasn't really that hard when he used greed, and he was a few meters above the entrance in no time. Sure as hell, he heard noises right behind the entrance. People were speaking and the accent was Reachman. He was sure now. Sneaking a little look, John realized that there were only 4 men stationed on the entrance. Rather sloppy. He kicked the wall of the mountain, then loosened greed for a bit. Using his body's weight, he used greed like a swing to crash through the entrance of the mine while waving the hammer. 3 fell in one go. The 4th wanted to show resistance, but the hammer nailed him to down. The men who survived John were rather unlucky. If they died without knowing what hit them, it would have been much better than seeing John crushing the life out of them by breaking their neck. John was now in. He switched from the champion's cudgel to greed and transformed it into a short bow. Holding a few arrows at the same hand as the bow, John was skilled enough to shoot at a fast rate that way. He walked in the mine, avoiding all the traps and the alarms. He met 2 men sitting around and shot 2 arrows in less than a second to their throat. Thud thud. They fell dead. John sighed. Normal people are so fragile. His level of power is simply enough to make up for his lack of magic, but he is still acting like a crybaby who lost his favorite toy and wants it back. He sighed again and headed forwards. Not too far from his previous stop, John was ambushed by a Forsworn who seemed to have detected John somehow. A fight broke out and 3 more guys joined up. Not even waiting for them to surround him, John threw greed on one of the Forsworn, and greed acted like a liquid and completely covered the head of the man, causing it to struggle for air. John was already punching a man to his throat, causing him to suffocate in a critical state. That took the man's axe and threw it towards another who avoided it to land on the 4th's head, but the 3rd was mutilated by a kick that dislocated his jaw and fell dead. Quadra kill. Shut up, Shadow. Seriously, you are good at this. Why use magic when you are this good as a warrior? Your martial arts can be even considered one of the highest ranking even in Akavir. Sigh. Didn't you see that just now? What? That idiot, he snuck up on me. If I had my magic, Shadow, I'd have killed all those fucks without even coming in this mine. Yep, stay shut. To John, who came from a magicless world, magic was everything he ever hoped for and part of his identity. To lock him from using magic for over 3 months, John was already furious at everything Forsworn and swore an oath of vengeance for all what they did to him, for chasing his brother and killing 9 of Winterhold's finest men, for causing Nefertiti to disappear God knows where, and for simply humiliating him. Every Forsworn blood is to be spilled in John's book by now. Finally, after reaching the end of the cave, John found the central place where the Forsworn main gang was gathered. The place was a mess. Over 11 Forsworn, one of them is a Briarheart. There were people too. Women who seemed to have been some villagers kidnapped from the villages outside the mine. By the looks of it, the men were used to labor in the mine and the women were raped. Typical Forsworn. At least they didn't start a cannibalism feast yet. During the past week and during his stay in the Briarheart Grove, John has seen many things like that. The Forsworn were savages whose action denied them from the right to even live. Getting rid of them was like pest exterminating to John. He formed greed into a short bow again, and aim took many arrows. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. 5 died in a blink of an eye. The remaining ones jumped behind cover or the hostages. By Dagon! He is here already? One of the men shouted. The Forsworn started to make threats and shoot back at John, who also hid behind cover. He wasn't really hiding, but he was thinking. I was being expected? John thought. Something was wrong for both sides. John was expected, but he ambushed them, and they still fell for it despite knowing he'd come. What is going on? John discarded the thoughts amidst confusion and started to fight back the arrows that were targeting him. He took an arrow that was tied with some bones and feathers while its head was dyed with blood. John took the arrowhead near his lips and started muttering words. Ze du vus kraza dar wayaze ax arkkins nias tail. The technique John was using was called the totem arrow. It was literally a homing arrow that can pierce anything. The hedge magic that John used was a mix of chanting magic to the spirits of Nirn and powered by his own blood using the blood magic. To chant words that has a chance to be understood, John used the dragon language. After preparing the arrow, John notched it and twisted the bowstring while pulling to give it a curve and loosed. The arrow flew splendidly in an arc and hit the man who spoke just a while ago in his shoulder, pinning him to the wall behind him. The shot was so impossible that it caused the others to lose focus for a second, and John used the chance to kill 2 more. 2 of the remaining 3 ran towards the captives and wanted to kill them to force John out of cover, but what they couldn't foresee was John actually racing them towards the captives and throwing the hammer at one of them while intercepting the other one with a clothesline. See no evil. John mocked the man who fell. You bast! John then blasted the man's head with a stomp. Speak no evil. There was one Forsworn left that can fight, the Briarheart. Briarhearts are not really bright and sometimes need commands from the ones who are they used to. John saw the process happen a few times in the Briarheart Grove. The first few voices that the Briarheart listens to are the ones he or she obeys. Voices are the key to control those things. The Briarheart was already ordered to fight John. It held a steel sword in a hand and a lightning spell on another. John used greed to pull the champion's cudgel from far away like a chain, then transformed greed into a shield. Fighting a Briarheart in his state was risky. He had no magic and can only use his martial arts. The Briarheart charged at John while shooting lightning spells that John blocked with a greed. The Briarheart jumped to strike John from above, but it was a stupid mistake to jump in a fight. John avoided and waved his hammer at the Briarheart, smiting him away. The Briarheart endured and landed away. The annoying thing with this Briarheart was how its heart was hidden under a metal plate nailed into his chest. A shame. If John can snatch the heart, then it would be game over. The Briarheart charged again, but John bashed him faster with the agreed shield, and waved the hammer at the left arm of the Briarheart, smashing it in one go. The Briarheart was enraged, and it waved its sword at John's arm that held the hammer, but John withdrew it fast, sacrificing the hammer that fell to the ground. John the formed agreed into 2 hands' palms on his hands. With those oversized hands, John could grab the Briarheart's right arm and attack with the other the Briarheart's guts. His stomach was opened, but the damn thing refused to die. Taking a page from Sheogoratha's book, John pulled out the intestines of the Briarheart with his free hand, then warped them around him, immobilizing it. The body of the Briarheart was badly damaged, and it could no longer sustain more injuries, so it stood still. John smiled and clapped with the agreed hands on the Briarheart's head. Hear no evil. The head was completely turned into mush. John made a satisfied smile, and looked at the people behind him, then gave a nod. Are there any more of those? John said. The people were scared shitless, but they shook their heads. You are free to leave, but I advise to follow me out. Not sure what will happen. They nodded. Perfect. John turned around to the last remaining Forsworn, the one pinned from the shoulder by a cave wall. I have some questions. Answer them, and you will die swiftly with your balls intact. Don't answer them, and I will fondle your balls until they become at the size of your head, and will make your lungs drawn on your own blood. Capiche? Outside the mine, a large band of Forsworn was surrounding. Their head was none other than Alaric of Karthspire. You said the Nord entered here? Alaric spoke to a man. Yes, Prince. Elder Nepos had me follow him all the way here. We have him cornered. Go back to Elder Nepos and thank him, Morven. Thank him for all the information he brings to us from Markarth. We've got this, Alaric said, and made all the men point their weapons at the cave. The wait began for John to come out, but an hour has passed. Should we go in there? A man asked. Wait, he has to come, Alaric said. Just as he said so, a few things flew out from the entrance of the mine. They rolled over until they reached Alaric's feet. This, the men gasped. These were the heads of the men who were waiting for that cursed Nord. If not to capture him, then weaken him enough, but it seemed that he prevailed. Not only that, he was inviting them in. Eric was enraged and was about to step in to kill the Nord himself, but his men stopped him. That Nord was a scary opponent even after he was weakened, and was put under the soul shackles of the Briarheart tree. Leave me be. I'll kill him with my hands. Alaric kicked his men away. Be patient, Prince. We will go with you. Formation. Alaric's aide calmed him down and called for a formation to enter the mine. Alaric was in the heart of that formation. No one knew what trap is waiting inside for the John to personally invite them in, but better safe than sorry. Yet, there was no way anyone would be safe from what happens next. John's head was already healed, and a great deal of his power returned to him. His most essential power as a Dragonborn. Wywell Tur Shul. Chapter 343, The 4 Disasters of the Battle of Kolskeggr Bridge. Extra Chapter. Every new plus $10 patron or PayPal. Extra Chapter. 5,000 vote. Extra Chapter. 8,000 vote. Wywell Tur Shul. Fire, Inferno, Sun. John's shout echoed once again in the Reach. He was saving the shout for this kind of situation. The Forsworn could be in no worse position. Going through a mine tunnel which went straight in, John standing on the end and shouted the fire breath, he shout at them, the Forsworn having no way to avoid the destructive force of the Thursdayum in their straight-line formation. It was just a spectacle. John's fire breath killed everyone inside the tunnel, rendering them to ash. In the heart of the formation was Alaric. Half of the Forsworn were ahead of him, and the other half was behind him. He was about to step into the cave once John shouted, but his aide was there for him. The man pushed him from harm's way and took the shout head-on in Alaric's stead. No! Ha 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 ha! John's frenzied laugh and Alaric's mournful cry overlapped. John was happy to see those savages burn, and Alaric was heartbroken for his people. Alaric looked at the mine with anger while holding Bloodskull. He was going to make sure that this Nord never shouts again after this time. The Forsworn knew the fatal weakness of the Thursdayum, its long cooldown duration. If the Nord can shout now, then the hag's curse was broken, but that Nord should be still weakened. The soul-shackling vines are not anything a mortal can get rid of. Now is the time. Alaric jumped towards the cave, but just an inch away from turning into the tunnel, it happened again. Fuss aro da. Force, balance, push. Another shout was unleashed just a few seconds after the first. Alaric survived by a hair's width as the shout's effect stormed through the mine's entrance and attacked the group of Forsworn that was trying to group behind Alaric. Impossible! Alaric was shocked senseless as he fell on his ass while trying to back away. Two shouts at the same minute. No, with only a few seconds apart. That shouldn't be real. Alaric thought he witnessed the impossible when he fought John for the first time. John first shouted Grosh away, then shouted fire at the Leshen, but there was considerable time between the shouts. Not a few seconds. Come, all of you. This was not the time to hold back anymore. Alaric needed everyone and everything he got. From the hills around the mine, a horde of Forsworn appeared. They were as large as the horde that came to hunt Wulfur once. This time, they were sure that John is weakened. Their informant in Markarth has found John and was keeping an eye on him. This was the right time to strike the weakened beast, but it seems that the beast was saving up his strength too. This is going to be tough. Alaric has no idea what a cornered cat like John can do. He needed to use all the force he has to get done with it and kill that Nord. Both John and Alaric had the same idea in their head. Under Aetherius on Nirn, only one of them can live. Their people are forever enemies, and between them is bad blood that can never be resolved. The Forsworn were all waiting for a single silhouette of John to appear, but before they know it, the man himself was standing in front of the mine's entrance with blood covering him. Shoot everything! Alaric shouted. Arrows, stones, rocks, spears, javelins, flame, frost, lightning, and even poison bombs. A barrage of projectiles and spells targeted John. No one can survive that. Ven Garnos! Wind, unleash, strike. A third shout echoed in the reach. 3 shouts thus far. A cyclone of wind formed in front of John. It enveloped everything ahead of him. All the arrows, spells, and bombs were swallowed by that cyclone that didn't stand in its place but advanced towards the Forsworn. Chaos and panic took over. All the spells were negated by the wind element, which can suppress any other element, and all the projectile were deflected by the force of the cyclone. The cyclone carved a bloody line in the lines of the Forsworn, but not only that, all the projectiles that targeted John started flying randomly along with people and limbs. It was a disaster. A man can cause a tornado to happen. What are the chances against such a thing? The Forsworn knew this was not the time to retreat. Attack before he shouts! Someone cried. The Forsworn couldn't wait any longer. A few Briarheart warriors led the charge at John, but he was waiting for them with a grin. He was already preparing for the next shout. Joel vus motad. Earth, Nirn, quake. The chargers heard the words, and so did Nirn itself. A sense of disaster struck everything around John, and the creatures started to escape. All the birds in a mile around John abandoned their nest and escaped away. The Forsworn were on the wrong end of the cannon and the center of the disaster. The earth beneath their feet shook. No, it moved like water. It was an earthquake. A small scale but a real one. Stalagmites came from the ground and skewered the unlucky ones. The earth started to swallow and entomb others. The luckiest ones fell on the ground and lost the sense of the world, enduring the weight of their comrades falling on them. The shouts from a while ago were nothing compared to this earthquake shout and the cyclone. These were disasters. An idea came into the head of one of the forsworn, and it spread like a plague. Run! Run! Despite the turmoil, he stood up and ran away, yet failing to find a proper foothold. He would fall only to stand up again and repeat. No, 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 you are not running. John didn't like what he saw. The mayhem can't end here. He wasn't satisfied yet. For a month, he was waiting for the day when the forsworn come to find him. He'd always go out and wreak havoc, trying to kill as many as he can while looking for a clue, but this is not enough yet. The few hundred forsworn ahead of him are not enough to satisfy his bloodlust. The past month he meditated very hard not to cultivate essence energy, but to prepare for when he can use the Thursdayum once again. He created a few new shouts by all the knowledge he accumulated all those years. He was still not done. Another shout was on the tip of his tongue. Strun Bakuo. Storm, wrath, lightning. The forsworn heard one more shout and their hearts sank. The sky above them darkened and the clouds moved in a very weird motion. Rumble, rumble, rain. This was just too much already. First was the wind, second was the earth, and now the sky itself pouring lightning on them. Crackle, rumble, crackle. No! Help! Prince! Help us! The forsworn kept retreating and dying. Alaric was being dragged by his men and saw how the scene unfold. He was crying tears of blood for the people that were getting killed. It was too much. As the leader of his people, this was too much to bear. Unforgivable. Nord, the gods won't let have peace for this. John, who was watching the scene with a wide sadistic smile, heard Alaric. My name is John Dare. Remember it as it is the name of the man who will eradicate your kind. John replied at the faraway Alaric. The men dragging Alaric away reached the road and started to cross the Karth River to escape from John. Alaric was reluctant to withdraw, but he had no choice. The horde of hundreds that came after John got ravaged by him alone. A single man putting down an army with his voice. Who can stop that? Alaric now lost two hordes to John. One at the day John was captured, and he lost 80% of his men going after John here in Kolskeggr crossing. The lightning from the sky kept hunting down the men on a slow rate, but kept eating away their morale like a black hole. Still John was not satisfied. He wanted Alaric. John chased after the retreating remnants of the forsworn horde as they were crossing the bridge, and a demonic idea came to his mind. A shout that he learned from his mother Hilda, the shout his clansmen learn. Lamarian Kron. Water, wave, tide. The world rumbled once again. This time, it was not the wind, not the earth or the lightning of the sky. This time, it was the water, the very river, the water under the bridge no one ever thought to face. Karth River moved as if it was a living being and rose for the call of John. The water retreated back for a short while, then charged forward at the bridge in a sight that no one ever saw. The fourth disaster struck. The old stone bridge was washed clean. All the forsworn that were running for their lives got annihilated. Not entirely every forsworn. The few that survived were clinging to life on the bank of the river. Alaric miraculously survived for the 6th time this day. The damn cockroach! John was stupefied of the heavenly luck that forsworn possessed. He was about to step forward, but he felt something and halted his step. Alaric dragged his body up and saw John on the other side of the river, standing there looking at him. Rain, rain. The blowing of the cold wind, the thudding of the falling rocks, the crackling of the storm and dripping of the raindrops, the flowing of the river. The very world itself started to scare Alaric. He was terrified. The one he was up against is not the one he faced before. He thought by killing that Nord called John, he can be qualified to kill the enemy of his people, Ulfric Stormcloak. But just now, Alaric realized that Ulfric is not even a threat compared to the dragon whose reverse scale was touched. There was one thing he can do. Turn his tail and run. There is no surviving for him and his people if they are found. Run, He shouted to his body, and it did follow his will. He ran without looking back. On the other side of the river, John was still frozen. "You fucking idiot!" Shadow was cursing at him, yet he had no power to even reply in his mind. The vines around his body assaulted him with all its might. John used his essence energy to stimulate his Thursdayum and be able to shout faster than even his usual. This was a mistake. Puke. John, who exhausted himself, started puking blood and fell on the ground powerlessly while holding his guts in pain. He finally got a taste of the power he used to wield before, but his reckless action backfired on him. He will survive, but he needs time to recover. No. He needs a real cure for this thing around him. He always rejected a certain solution in his mind, but this was unbearable. He needs his power back, and whatever the cost, he will do it. John dragged his body up and started walking back to Markarth, where things should have gone in a certain way a long time ago. Still, one thing was clear. The whole Reach heard those shouts, and only one person in Skyrim under High Hrothgar can shout like that. John Dare's voice reached not only the Reach but echoed around Skyrim. The Battle of Kolskeggr Bridge and the 4 disasters that John conjured are merely the ringing bell marking the beginning of the chaos. Chapter 344 Aftermath. An extra sponsored by @G0LB0R. Praise the Sun. The Battle of Kolskeggr Bridge, also known as the Battle of Forsworn John Dare, had an after effect that left the Reach speechless for 3 days. John Dare, the northern Thane who mysteriously appeared in Markarth during the chaos 3 months ago and disappeared presumed dead, has made quite the shocking absurdity. The Tongue of Thunder, the 4 Calamities, the Dragon of Winterhold, as well as many nicknames, started to spread around for John. He was revered as a mighty Nord whose voice transcended sense. The Nord bards sang his name for 3 whole days in Markarth, and the Jarl started investigating what happened. Sure enough, the missing Thane preferred to stay missing, and no one found a trace of him after he left Kolskeggr Mine. The ones who spread the tale of the battles were of course the hostage villagers of Kolskeggr. John Dare has declared his identity while he was shouting the Forsworn to their demise. Knowing John Dare's personality, the influential people knew exactly that John Dare is the person who would use the Thursdayum without holding back even in front of the High King of Skyrim. But to think that he is waging war on the Forsworn. The people couldn't understand how deep the grudge between the Forsworn and John was for him to declare that he will eradicate the Forsworn. The Nords and the Reachmen never got along anyway, but the tension between the two people started to rise in Markarth. The Reachmen living in Markarth, who had nothing to do with their brethren of the Forsworn, still felt bad about the coming days. They were always treated horribly by the Nords, and the Forsworn faction appeared because of this treatment. Still, the man in the center of this uproar remained hidden God knows where. Away from Markarth in a remote village, Jonrad and Tyr Firemane sat in a traveler's inn listening to the stories. "At least the kid is doing good," Tyr whispered to Jonrad. John raised his head looking around from under his hood and sighed. "I don't know. Don't know what? If he is fine or not. He said he would eradicate the Forsworn. That doesn't sound like fine to me," Jonrad said and kept thinking. "What do you think the reason is then?" "They probably. I don't know." Jonrad tried to dismiss the ideas in his head. "You think they hurt him?" Tyr asked. Jonrad nodded and replied. "Why do you think he is not contacting us? Something is weighting him down, or maybe he lost the ability to contact us. We know at some point that he was captured and escaped after 2 months. 2 months is not that much, but that made John Hild be this angry. The tale about the battle that he conjured the 4 calamities of nature by his voice was something really extreme." Jonrad analyzed. "Yeah, he can just kill a few of them and teleport away with magic. Not to take them on in such a way. But still, 4 calamities is really something. Can you do anything like that? Me? I don't think I can do what he did, but I can at least burn them off the face of Nirn. So, where do you think we can find him now? Markarth is an option, but after such incident, John Hild will find a place to hide really well. I expect him at least to do that. He will focus on recovering, and then come out to confront the Forsworn in their stronghold. We can look for him now and leave an eye on the Forsworn stronghold. There is only you and me, though. As Tyr said so, Jonrad's eyes froze for a second and he closed them, then focused on his head, and started muttering some words. Tyr acted natural and waited for Jonrad to finish. This was a telepathic call, probably from Nurina. Jonrad opened his eyes. Hilda has arrived at Winterhold and Alina has departed to the Reach with a small militia, Jonrad said. Didn't we tell her to stay put? Stay put and leave John Hild to rot in the Reach for 3 months. I don't think a child like Alina will do things like that. Also, that smug Sigurd and sister Nurina are planning to come too after they heard that John is waging a war on the Forsworn. Well, we are not short on men anymore, Tyr said and drank his mead. 2 days ago in Winterhold, Alina was donned in her Stalrim gear, the Deathbrand armor, and carried her 2 blades, blood scythe and a soulrender. Mother, please take care of Jull for me. She turned around to face Hilda, who helped her put on the armor. Hilda smiled faintly and nodded. You too, take care of yourself and bring that foolish son of mine home. Yes, I will, Alina said and looked around. There were many people present in the room, Jenna Firemane, Nurina, Vladimir, Hafthor and the rest of the Firemans and the Moonblades who could come to aid Winterhold. Many of John's cousins and hers insisted that they would follow Alina to the Reach. There was also Lanmas Sutter, the man who lent Alina the royal seal of royal family of House Hlalu, as well as the heads of the departments. This was all in John's house. Alina spoke to them and then excused herself and went inside the main bedroom to see Jelinar. The pale elf girl was even paler and lost a lot of her weight. Beside her bed, there was Master Nurelian who was making her drink some potion. Jull. Alina. They called for each other, but to Alina's determined tone, Jelinar's tone was weak and barely hearable. I'll go and drag him home, Alina said. Jelinar smiled and nodded. Be safe. Alina smiled and kissed Jelinar on the head. She was about to say something, but she heard an uproar from outside the room. She hurriedly went outside the room to see what is happening, only to find Nurina telling the people around her something, and they are all opening their mouths from shock. Just as she asked what is going on, what she heard next was the best news she heard of in 3 months. John was appeared, had an epic battle with the Forsworn and sent them defeated. He then declared war on them. Alina's face hardened. We can't dally. The Empire may try to stop us at this rate. Alina spoke and looked at Vladimir. Contact Wulfr and Ongium, tell them to do whatever they are doing fast. We need to mobilize our people through the Pale right now. John needs an army. Vladimir nodded, then held a telepathy scroll and talked with Wulfr. Alina turned around to the rest. The situation has escalated at this rate. We need some of you in Whiterun and Rorikstead to secure the supply lines. I believe you all understand the plan. The only change we are doing is that we are moving fast. Yes. Alina went out of the house followed by those who are coming with her. She rode Lochther and took off to the camp. All the forces were mounted and waiting. John has made sure to mass-produce Flame Atronach horse scrolls for a situation like this. All of the Dare Dragoons are essentially Atronach riders, and the force Alina is taking has borrowed the equipment from the Dare Dragoons. To not be confused with dragons, dragoons are cavalrymen but with a cooler name. The 400 troopers were all ready and marched from Winterhold to Neo Sarthal with haste. Upon arrival, Alina received a telepathy call from Vladimir. Alina, you are good to go. Wulfr has returned from Dawnstar, but he will cause a political problem. What problem? You see, it started like this, the night before Alina's departure, of the sea north to Dawnstar. Wulfr and Ongium were on one of the cruiser ships, the Hasty Bee, the fastest ship in the fleet. They were discussing the operation they were about to start, while using their auras to observe Dawnstar. It is almost the time. Let's move. Ongium gave the order. As someone who was raised in Dawnstar, he was well aware of all the in and outs of the town. He was also aware of the annoying personality of Jarl Skald the Elder and how an old brat he can be. This operation, he suggested, was to allow the forces of the company to move across the Pale without anyone hindering them from the Jarl's side. Jarl Skald always had a low opinion of John and didn't like how he didn't support Ulfric despite being a key figure in not only one of the old holds but the oldest of all holds. He also detested the Dare Dragon Company from pulling the rug from under Dawnstar in business. Reasons varied, but Skald's action was always that of a brat no matter how elder he became. Shutting the door in the face of Winterhold after John's disappearance was the last nail in the coffin. The company needed to take action. Real action. As the Hasty Bee approached the docks of Dawnstar, Ongium and Wulfr made sure that no sound or light leak from the ship. The moons were not that bright, which was for their advantage, and the guards seemed lax. Just as the ship was too close to be hidden, the alarm bells rang. Full speed ahead, Ongium shouted, and the engine of the ship roared in excitement. In just mere seconds, the ship's metal support frame was crushing to the pier. We have 10 minutes. Move, move, move. Secure the dock's chains, blow up the dock's chains. The ship's small cannons aimed at the unmanned defenses. The main front cannon was aimed at the wall around Jarl's longhouse. Bang, bang, bang. Explosions echoed in the night in Dawnstar, and people started running and screaming. Wulfr, our turn. Ongium and Wulfr, commanding 20 elite warriors from the company, jumped off the ship and conjured flame horse Atronak. They charged like hellrunners to the Jarl's longhouse. Bang! The front wall of the longhouse was blown off as soon as the Magicka ball landed. The guards of the longhouse were stormed by the 20 strongmen, and no resistance was offered due to them being stunned by the explosion. What is that? Who in oblivion would do? Who are you? An elderly man holding a sword with a few guards around him, and some women hiding behind him. Jarl Skald, you have violated the code of honor and did some terrible deeds to Winterhold. The Dare Dragon Company is not a thing the likes of you can play tricks on. Ongium spoke as he walked up. No. You traitor! Jarl Skald saw Ongium and his face paled. You are not blocking the roads for our people again. We are here to make sure of that and to take insurance with us, Wulfr said as the men aimed their weapons at Skald's guards. That was enough for 2 agents of the Team Zero to sneak around and grab the package. We are done. One of the agents spoke. Good. Let's leave. The package was a girl in her mid-20s. She was looking around with a pale face. No. You. Hands off her. Jarl Skald was enraged, but he was completely outnumbered in his own house, seeing this woman being taken away. If you don't open the roads by the morning, we will return her to you piece by piece. Wulfr said, retreated with the men. Ongium followed as the last man and disappeared behind the rubble and smoke. A minute later, the Hasty Bee was sailing out of the Dawnstar while spewing flames at any ship that dared to chase. Ongium and Wulfr stood beside each other. Ongium gave a sigh and patted Wulfr's shoulder. The dawn was already here. Now the troopers can move through the Pale. Chapter 345, A Deal with the Devil. Thanks to @Colonel Kaido for donating. Blue flames. Cold blue flames. So cold that it makes the bone ache. Not the warm golden flame but a cruel and cold one. John looked at the spell that he evoked. It was the only thing he can use, the only magic that he can evoke. It wasn't a normal experience. He had to go out and look for more forsworn in the reach, sacrifice them and gain such power. He finally got to use the sacrifice magic and the result was this great. Of course, he had to have a pact with a Daedric prince. What he gained was this cold blue flame, a flame that would obliterate the mortals and ravage their essence. The cold flames of the fourth sinus of Takabar, a pocket realm in Oblivion adopted by Kaldharbor where the blue cold flames run wild. It was beautiful in every way John can ever think of. Feeling such a blue cold flame would make people appreciate the blessing of the golden warm flame. The ash, supposedly gray in color, became snow-white blue hint of glow. John had to give something for this power, to get a part of his own corrupted just like how Vermina corrupted Alina's eyes. His guardian dragon blessing was now corrupted too. This is the power granted to you by the Lord, mortal. Be thankful. A nasty voice interrupted John's thoughts. Shut the fuck up, Zykel. John replied harshly at his black and red-skinned companion with two horns who he barely endured the presence of. A Draemora from Oblivion is not the best companion one can ask for. That Draemora was responsible for holding the Soul Sigil Stone, an artifact that helps John fulfill his pact with the Daedra. Hurry up and find more, mortal. These are just 10 mortals you killed. Summon me once again when there is more prey, ha ha. The Draemora disappeared with a burst of disgusting laughter. John sighed in his heart and Carried looked at the mace in his hand. It took him 4 days and he finally made it. He can use what he used to have, but he can use magic once again. It all happened last night. Last night, Markarth, the abandoned house. Hey, I am bored. Are you not bored yet? If it was Sheogorath, things would have been much different, you know. My intestines and all would be flying around and put back repeatedly. Fine, if you are going to play hard to get then make a move. I mean you are the Lord of Domination, and you can't even play Monopoly? I am ashamed for you. You know I can do this all day, right? Mortal. Oh. He finally speaks. Enough with your pity games, surround yourself now. Based on what exactly? You and I both know how this game works and I still have something I want your help with. I caught that friend back there for your sake. I assume letting him complete the rite will be very pleasing for Bothia to see. Isn't that right, Logrolf? Muffled groans. See, Logrolf agrees. So that's it? That's your game? Yes. I help you, you help me. Everyone walks away happily, except for Logrolf. He doesn't seem like walking away anytime soon. Ha 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 ha. So you were fooling around my altar for 3 days just to get to this point? Fooling around? You may be right, at least you got to enjoy it. Ha. Mortal, you are acting so bold. I am now trying to pick which one would be better to break, you or Logrolf. As far as I am concerned, all you can do is some light and sound effects. That's if you are not going to call a champion of yours to get rid of me. Now, shall we talk business? Humph. What do you want, mortal? Let's see. I am sure you already know who I am, judging by how you Daedric princes love to wager on us pity mortals doing things for you. Yes, yes. I am aware, you are a laborer of Azura's. Well, you are right, and as if you may have known, I have faced some bad luck lately. You see this vine growing on my body? I want to get rid of it, but I can't. Well, I'll be needing the help of a mighty Daedra. Is that it? I can help you, but I won't. What? Why? You mortals and your pea-brains. Azura gave you a task to cure yourself, why come to me? I thought. You thought you can make a deal? Who do you think I am? Clavicus Vile? Damn it! Things seem to have gone out of John's expectations. Even with a bargaining chip like his, the Daedric prince he is communing with refused to help him. John looked at the hateful altar in front of him with hate. It has been 3 days since he returned from the Battle of Kolskeggr Bridge, and he was trying to secure a way out of these vines by any and all means. His best shot was with the powerful Daedric princes. His choices are limited to 2 Daedra, and they are more horrible than the other one. It was either the Mistress of Decay, the Devourer of the Dead, and the Spirit Daedra, the one known as Namra, or the King of, the Prince of Schemes, and the Harvester of Souls, the one known as Molag Bal. Between the Lady of Cannibalism and the Lord of Strife, John had to choose the later for reasons varied but not important anymore. It seems that Molag Bal is not helping. But for you to bring me the one who desecrated my altar, I guess I should reward you. John rolled up his eyes. I don't need your mace. Too eye-catchy. John completely shut off Molag Bal. He knew the reward of this quest already and knew many things about Molag Bal himself. The Daedric prince loved schemes and backstabbing as well as domination, but what is not known is that Molag Bal loves being defied and fought against. Those who surrender too easily are of not entertaining anymore. Still, Molag Bal had something that John desired. Really? Then what if I tell you that I can help you in a way? You see, I can give you a mean to use magic once again. Molag Bal didn't hide the malice in his tone. John narrowed his eyes and looked at the dark demonic altar in front of him. I am listening. Ha ha. Simply use my mace in a way that, let's say, different than its real purpose. My mace can trap souls. Rather than sending them in pity black soul gems, you can use a different way to send those souls directly to me, and I will grant you a set of spells you can use. Something picked by a Daedric prince. Molag Bal's offer ended here. John kept thinking for a few seconds. And what about the parts you are not telling me? You left a lot of blanks in that agreement. Anyone would have been fooled but not me. You want me to use a mean I don't know about to send souls directly to you and get a power I don't understand. Sounds like the recipe of disaster itself. Don't you agree, Logrolf? Oot. Ma. Cut me loose. See? Even Logrolf agrees. John detected where Molag Bal's scheme is. Humph. Mortal, you are annoying. Take the mace, bring me souls, gain power. Pity mortals don't get to negotiate. Oh, that's so? Surprisingly, I agree. Still, not only you offered me your mace but also power. I didn't see that one coming, to be honest. I will agree to the offer if you answer this one. John said, looked to the altar that was shaped like Molag Bal's head. Why help me this much? That's what you want to know? Fine, let's say that Sheogorath and Vermina have put a huge bet on you completing your labors. I saw those two doing so and I did like them. Malakath and Dagon are betting against you, so it would worth it to see them losing splendidly. Wait, I understand why Dagon is betting against me, but Malakath? Well, looks like the orcs are going to need a 5th Orsinium. Is there a free place in Cold Harbor? Ha! Nice one. So, you take my deal, mortal? Just make it more appealing. Fine, here is the deal. For every soul you damn to my realm, Cold Harbor, I will give you enough magic power by the blessing I shall grant you. 10 souls and I will give you a magic spell you can use. 100 souls, and I will give you another spell of much use to a man of your talent. 1,000 souls, and you will gain power very befitting of you. Those 3 powers are the only things I will grant you beside my mace. And how will I send the souls to you? That won't be a problem you need to worry about, mortal. John became silent for some time. Dealing with Molag Bal is no ordinary matter. A pact may happen, but there is some scheme being brewed too. Something John can't foresee. What about this vine around me? Will I be able to get rid of it? That's Azura's labor, mortal. I can't interfere. TSK. I just need to figure out what she meant that the cure is in the reach. Is that what she said? She said, heal as soon as you can, the secret lies in the reach, no place else. By blood, by curse and by sacrifice, you shall recover. Oh, Azura and her way of speaking, hateful as ever. Shouldn't you Daedric princes be high and mighty when you talk to us puny little weak, pathetic mortals? As much as it pleases me that you admit it, you need to be one bored Daedric prince to talk that way. Only the twilight rose of vanity uses such a way in speaking, thinking high and mighty of herself. I thought she is one of the good guys. A good guys? Ha, that's a new one. Azura of all Daedra? She'd curse an entire race on a whim, raise the sea in a fit of anger, chock the life out of you puny mortals once she was really enraged. You don't know what you are dealing with, mortal. I may be honest to my cause, but there are worse rulers than I, much more. Fine. Do you have any idea how my labor work? Ha! Were you listening at all, mortal? Your labor is simple, and you were rather doing it splendidly well, without even noticing. By blood, by curse, by sacrifice. That's your answer. John tilted his head. Isn't that the Hedge magic? Error. You mortals are stupid. Azura wants you to shed blood, to place curse and to sacrifice your enemies in the reach. Azura is offended for your sake, mortal. Molag Bal quietened for a second, then spoke again. Azura wants destruction. Chapter 346 Unusal Friendship. Sorry for being late, a really hot day in Ramadan. 40C 104F, and it keeps getting worse. And today's chapter is a bit of a spin-off. Brain is overheating. Bash thud. Screams. No. Please. Mercy. Say ah. Ah. Good boy. Bash thud. Phew. That was refreshing. John stretched his body up and took a breath after whipping the blood off his face with his sleeve. He was surely working hard. He looked around him with satisfaction and nodded to himself. Today's harvest was bountiful. Last night, he stalked some forsworn to a cave and waited until all the cave dwellers gathered. He then raided the camp this morning with his new companion and killed over 20 forsworn with the mace of Molag Bal. The bodies were all piled around him. That mace is also known as the vampire's mace, and has the ability to trap souls, recover fatigue and absorb magicka. Mortal, you missed one. A voice so nasty that it felt like its owner had a broken radio for a throat, called for him. John's good mood always gets ruined when he hears that voice. He can't get used to it no matter what. Zykel, you son of a bitch, clear your damn throat before you talk. John turned to the Draemora following him and cussed right away. Zykel's voice was just like any other Draemora, so it was John who unintentionally gets goosebumps from the tone itself. Draemora are the equivalent of demons, red and black-skinned with horns and a deep unexplainable grudge against mortals. Spare me your nonsense, mortal. Take this one. Zykel indifferently replied at John, and threw the forsworn boy that he caught. You retarded Daedra, when was the last time you used your brain? John looked at the boy and sighed. He waved the mace and killed him. I needed that boy alive so we can follow him to another camp when he gets away. Really? That's your reaction? Mortal, don't test my patience. Just go look for them the way you normally do. John glared at the Draemora with contempt. Never he thought that the Draemora are this stupid. Well, maybe because Zykel was not a high-ranked Draemora. He always blows John's cover, and had a thing for charging head-on without thinking. Normally, John would conjure Draemora to fight for him in a direct fight, but he never tried those sons of bitches in stealthy combat before. They completely suck if Zykel was not a half-witted retard among his kind. Still, he had his uses. Molag Bal assigned Zykel randomly for John when he granted his blessing. The blessing of Molag Bal. Never did John ever think of having such a thing. It had only one purpose, and that was corruption. Molag Bal did not mention this part to John intentionally, but it pissed John off right away. John had the physique of a fire mane blessed by the guardian dragon that grants the ashen flames, the flames that John and his father can use to buff their normal fire magic to an unimaginable degree. The blessing of Baal simply interfered with the blessing of the guardian dragon, and changed the white ashen flame of incineration to the blue cold flame of essence drain. John didn't want to admit it, but the cold flames suited him better. Once he killed 10 Forsworn and granted their souls to Molag Bal, this cold flame was bestowed on him. He can now cast his fire magic only in the form of blue cold flames. This was the first part of the blessing that can be acquired by sacrificing 10 souls. When the sacrifice reaches 100 souls, another magic will be granted to John, and the same with 1,000 souls. Still, how can John use any of that? Wasn't he supposed to have his magicka locked by the damn vine leeching around him? Here where Zykel comes in. Zykel was tasked by Molag Bal to carry an artifact from Oblivion called the Soul Sigil Stone. That sigil stone is something produced by Daedric magic be used for many things such as opening gates from Oblivion to the mortal realm Mundus, a medium to use magic, and can replace soul gems for enchanting. This soul sigil stone has the function to absorb the souls and deliver them to Molag Bal, as well as share some of these souls' essence with John. Using that essence, John can use the magic Molag Bal bestowed on him. So, horns for brains, how many souls did we collect so far? 43, too slow, mortal. It has been 2 days already. What the fuck do you want me to do? If you just shut up and let me do my work, I would have found another camp by now. Huh? Blaming me for your weird tastes now, mortal? Who said you have to be picky with your prey? Just kill anyone and finish the job already. I can't stand you, weak, pathetic creatures. Do you want to die? Huh? The likes of you don't even dare to scratch me, the mighty Zykel of CLA. Puff. John slammed Zykel on the back of his head with the mace. Zykel died immediately and his body was taken back to Oblivion. Dare is my fucking surname, you noisy fucker. John started massaging his temples. Listening to the ranting Dremora all day made his head ache. Well, killing Zykel is not possible anyway. He is a Daedric creature, which means he is an immortal. Most of the creatures of Oblivion work this way. Wherever they get killed, they resurrect back again in their realm of origin by a substance called the chaotic Seracia, and that goes from the Dremora to the Atronak to all other Daedric creatures. The reason for this is that the Daedric creatures have no Anuic animus, soul, but have a different version called the Vistage. Speaking of Vistages, this is the fate that John bestowed on the Forsworn. The reason why John refused to target any people other than the Forsworn, such as bandits, was because of what happens to those who get claimed by Molag Bal. That Daedric prince is also called the Harvester of Souls for a reason. In his realm of Kaldharbor, there are beings called the Soul Shriven. These are mortals whose souls got claimed by Molag Bal, and he literally exchanged their souls with Vistages, which enables them to form bodies in his realm and become eternal will-less slaves, but they are not native to Oblivion, so the body of a soul shriven is an imitation of the body worn in life, suffering rapid wear and decay until it dies, for its vestige only forms a body once again, over and over, like a Daedra. Their appearance is shocking too. Pale skin, white eyes, hairless and feeble, the soul shriven experience nothing but labor and torment until they are rendered feral with minds too broken to work. This is a true existing version of hell, and John was the judge, jury and executioner of send people there. Still, he didn't feel sorry for anyone he sent there so far. The next day, John summoned Zykel by the method Molag Bal left him with. "Mortal, you won't get away with that!" Zykel shouted and waved his great sword at John the moment he was summoned. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." John simply kicked Zykel's leg, causing him to lose balance and fall on his face. "More tail!" As Zykel was about to lash in another fit of rage, John stomped on his head, causing him to black out. It took Zykel a few minutes to wake up again, only to find John has stripped him clean of his armor and weapons, as well as the soul sigil stone, all after tying him up to a tree. Unable to control his anger anymore, Zykel was about to blow up from anger and started cursing. John ignored the raging Dremora and kept inspecting the sigil stone with interest. This was not a normal sigil stone, it was something much more valuable. Sigil stones valued in quality and shapes, but this one can be said as unique. John can tell as Nurina has a few sigil stones that she extorted out of some Daedric creatures, and she considers them very valuable, and keeps them hidden even from John. He could tell that Nurina would move mountains for that sigil stone he took from Zykel. He sighed in his heart and thought of getting a few sigil stones of his own one day to study them. He really wanted to see how the Daedric magic made such artifacts. They were very similar to his magica reactors in some sense. He put the sigil stone back carefully and started to inspect Zykel's gear. It wasn't the Daedric gear he knew from the game or any sort of magic items. They were all very sturdy pieces that would fetch quite the price around Tamriel. The Daedric craftsmanship is always seen as the best despite its diabolical fashion. Alright, horns of brains, we had our fun. Ready for today's work? Ready. Ready? Mortal, I swear on the name of Lord Molagbal you will. Shut up or I'll hit you. Grah! Bash. John punched Zykel in the face before cutting him loose and returning his things to him. Try anything funny and next time you will deal with Lord Molagbal of yours. I am the keeper of his mace, so you get to shove your mortal act up your ass. Morta! John raised the mace as Zykel was about to lash out again, but the latter held his tongue immediately. Good. You and I will be great friends right away. First rule, friends don't talk. Grr. Or growl. Good boy. And that's how it started. A friendship story between a human and a Dremora based on the noble ethics of shutting the fuck up. Too bad it was short-lived. John had to kill Zykel once again by the end of the day for talking during stealth. Chapter 347 100 Kills. John's POV returns again. It feels so good to be back at the mind of my homicidally main character. For how long has it been since I thought so deep in myself, or maybe I was just thinking about myself all along without realizing. Funny, I never thought that one day I will indiscriminately kill people like that. I always had this rule with bandit. They leech on people like vermin, so they should be treated like vermin, stripped away from their humanity, and put to the sword. It was the best course of action for everyone. But what I am facing this time was something I preferred not to think too much about. Still, when I am alone with nothing to divert my poisonous thoughts, my mind comes to me and I start thinking. Was it really alright? Mass murder. Genocide. Condemning them to a literal hell. Just because of what? 2 months of captivity, a foot and a couple of fingers. I can just fix all that and move on. Really. They won't even come after me if I packed my shit and walked away. Still, I wasn't able to do so. Something about this whole mess wanted to make sense of itself, and it drove me mad. I can't help it anymore. Doing things like that was wrong. Just wrong. It won't help me at all. All I needed is to kill one man, remove the cursed vine and do whatever it is I usually do. Ironically, the way to do that is to kill more of those people so that I can amass enough power. Here I am trying to make sense of killing by more killing. I am sick of it, yet it is all that I need to do in the end. More killing. And here my number 99 victim. Just lying in his blood, forfeiting his life to my cause, being devoured by blue flames and running around as if it was burning him. It actually was. It was leaving white burn marks rather than black, as if it would make me feel any better. Making sense of killing by more killing is just stupid. Funny, I am getting cold feet, just one victim away from gaining more power. One more kill, mortal. Yeah. Still, I had to kill them and use their souls as means to an end. Now that I put it this way, feels like I am the bad guy in the end. How did it all start? I mean those Reach men. Why do they have to be so stubborn about sharing the Reach with the Nords? Fuck who sits on the throne. Life should never be the price for pride. The deadliest of all sins. Haha. Look who's talking. Me, the sinner of pride. I called myself Dare because I don't stand my pride being dared. But I know better, it is just a facade for my little weak self to hide behind. I don't know a better way to deal with this world than just acting high and mighty. Despite knowing though, I don't get why the Forsworn are so prideful despite being nothing but savages. They could have settled with Nords, grew their influence from being some simple minority to a potential ruling faction, and ride the law. But in the end, it is a racial conflict that can't be resolved even if we Nords killed the heads of all Forsworn. But how to resolve something with such a scale? How to put down an entity as large as the Forsworn? They are many, spread around, unending. Even if I killed 1,000, I won't even scratch the surface. I already annihilated Alaric's army twice, and that surely was more than 1,000. Just what would it take, as I know, killing the king doesn't end the war. In my past life, I read that thing about chess. Not all pieces are what they are, the king, the queen and the pawns. Why when all the pawns die, the game does not end despite it being realistic, and why when the king die the game is over despite being unrealistic. A nation can't survive without its army but can survive without its king, another one will rise anyway. That's when the meaning of the chess pieces becomes clearer. The pawn is the weakest but has a lot of potential, the queen is the strongest, and so on. All the pieces represent potential and resources, but the king represents what is really essential. What nothing can survive without. Hope, future, time. Take those away from a nation and you utterly destroyed it. You know what, Zykel? You are a better listener than I thought you would be. You are allowed to talk, by the way. So, mortal, does this mean you are not killing them or you are going to kill them? I don't know. Power for souls, life for death. I don't think I will wipe them out if that's what you are asking about. They will make sure that their future goes on and survives. And how is that? Simple, they know that I know that their base in Karthspire. They know that I am coming one day. They must have migrated all their children away and brought reinforcements. Children. That's what you mortals consider future. Yeah. I think it is different for you, Deidre. You don't have a future to speak of. Huh. What are you talking about, mortal? We are eternal. We may have learned fear and our thoughts evolve, but we are unending. We are the perfect beings to serve our Lord. Unlike your kind, we are not flawed. Zykel said while puffing his chest. Is that so? I couldn't help but smile. I think I pity your kind now. Pity? By a mortal? Yes. Your kind is eternally doomed in servitude. That's what we desire. Is that really true? Do you even desire anything? You are created and programmed to do a set of tasks that the Daedric princes give you. You are the perfect servant. You are eternal, you don't need to be fed or cared for, you can just be used without wearing off, and when you do, you get resurrected over and over again. Your kind may be eternal but doesn't have life. By that, you don't have future, you don't have hope, you don't have freedom. You are just an NPC in my opinion, and I think your ego itself may not be real. Just another thing granted to you by your Creator. And may God have mercy on those who are forever the slaves. Mortal, you really say interesting stuff that I don't fully comprehend. I am not sure what it all meant, but I am sure they were all said to make you feel better about yourself. I can't argue with that. But I feel really better about myself now that I've said all that. I hope you feel worse. Or do you even feel? Mortal, at least I can do that. Truly? Then let's put it to the test. When was the last time you felt joy? Not long ago, about 50 years ago, we were chasing that mortal that trespassed a certain place and was running really fast. Took us almost a day of chasing to catch him. And there was that time with a clanfear that bit on my commander's sword and started running. It was a good chase. Oh, so you are a chaser. Good, we have a situation here. Someone up that mountain is watching us for quite the time now. I am afraid that I don't have the means to catch him quietly without doing a fuss. Can you do it without uttering a word the way I taught you? Ha ha. Chasing a mortal? That's what I call sport. Hold this and don't lose it. Zykel handed me the soul sigil stone and disappeared in the darkness of the night. The half-witted idiot. All I needed is some time to study a thing or two about stone now that I have some magic power. I was thinking of using my own essence inside the vine to weaken it for a short while. It is a bit exhausting but will work. I just had to push some of that essence violently through the vine until it reaches the sigil stone. This is it, to pull some essence from the vine, weakening into some degree. It started as I expected but became quite painful. The process was draining me, but in the end, here was it. A signal. I could feel it. She is there. I stood up facing Markarth, which I haven't been to in a few days by now. Seems like I need to go back. Mortal, look what I found. No, let me go. Help. Shut it. Slap. Zykel brought a man to me. A Breton-like man with some fiendish facial features, a reach man. You got him without making a noise? I am impressed, Zykel. What? No. He heard me coming and started running, but he was slow. Mortals are so weak. Sigh. I think there is no hope for that fool. Fine. Speak up, Reachman. Why were you following me? And as always, no response came. Torture was an option, but the Reachmen are a bit nasty and used to that stuff. Still, the mace of Molag Bal can make people sing in the end. His name is Morven, apparently a forsworn spy in Markarth, and he was up to me the moment I appeared in Markarth. I didn't need to know much about him. He works for Nepos the Nose. I know both Morven and Nepos from the game. Nepos is an elderly Reachman undercover in Markarth that works as a double agent for both the Forsworn and the Silver Blood family of Nords. Things are not what they seem like. Nepos has a nose on that attack that targeted Wolfer. That was an answer that made more questions come to my mind, but one thing Morven said that made me curious. It was about Alaric. He was always called the prince, but I didn't notice anything about that. The prince must be related to a king, and there is no king in the Reach but the king in rags. Interesting. Bash thud. I killed Morven with a mace to the head. Looks like I need to go to Markarth after all. I looked at the soul sigil stone that absorbed Morven's soul as the 100th. I could see it glowing with power. Something awakened in me. A new spell. I could feel it as if a memory was being engraved in my head. I simply handed back the sigil stone to Zykel and cast the spell. Ha! Motherfucker! Not only I was going to Markarth, but I got a ride too. The next spell I got was a conjuration spell of Alyssum form curved head and twirled at the edge of my vision, its expressions blank of all emotion but for the avid hunger of the arsonist. A cold flame Atronak. Chapter 348 Development. The 5,000 extra. Weapons of the Forsworn clashed against the shields with the dragon and crescent coat of arms, only to hear the ringing of the hits being deflected. As they were confirmed close, the shields would bash and 3 rows of spears would go forward and obliterate the close Forsworn. The two forces were clashing for almost an hour. A well-equipped militia of highly trained soldiers and a chaotic horde of savages. The savages had high grounds but were being pushed back on a systematic pace. Alina was the one leading the company's militia of 400 troopers. She watched from the back how the tactics were being implemented by the militia and commanded the mages to land decisive hits on the back of the enemy. In most cases, she would prefer to be in the shadow of John basking in his glory, but on the battlefield, she would send him to the front and command the whole force from the back. That was John's and Alina's understanding. John may be a scary opponent in battle, but his strategies were all about guerrilla warfare, surprise attacks, and overwhelming force. In the clash of armies, John wasn't anything special, and there where Alina came. Corrupted or not, Alina's eyes were always special. No lie can pass through them, the would see through the hearts of people, and would even see the future. Even a monkey possessed those eyes. It can command the Imperial Legion itself, let alone a small militia, let alone a wise girl like Alina. The Forsworn tried to surprise her from the back, only to find fireballs already raining at them. They tried to throw rocks from the mountain, only to find the Dare militia completely handling them fine. Nothing was working. The Forsworn leader was in a complete disadvantage in his own camp, and felt completely desperate. Just who in the world can face Alina when she has an army that is capable of maneuvering all the death traps and the fortifications? Of course, that power of hers was a strategic secret only a few were aware of, and John has already seen its potential. In the mock battles between the various teams, Alina has already driven John insane countless times. She can see anything coming unless it is John himself, who is strangely immune to her powers. The deadly beautiful leader stood at the back of the troops wearing her ice armor under her signature style of dresses, that color was black covered by a black fox mantle. The two blades, blood scythe and a soul render, were on her left side over each other, and she wore an expressionless face. Behind her there was some of those who are close to her and John, such as Freya, Vladimir and half their firemane, as well as Trudvar, John's housecarl, Svaken Skywalker, Alina's housecarl, Lonmas Sutter and some Imperial Legion officers. The ones aware of Alina's power to command an army were as impressed as the ones who are not aware. She has her own system of commanding troops, and she kept the casualties very low. Hell, the casualties were only some minor injuries. Other than Alina, what was more impressive was the power of the militia. They were put under many disadvantages factors, yet they were fighting as if they were some army of dead men. First, they were fighting on the lower grounds, which eliminated their ability to charge and gave the enemy that advantage. Second, they were going up the mountain road while maintaining formation, which was ridiculously hard. Third, their equipment resembled that of the Imperial Legion except for its Nordic style. Still, the infantry carried skidum shields, long spears and arming swords. The archers carried lever-action crossbows, and the mages carried special staves. Those were professional fighters that the Legion would lust over them and try its best to saw them to its side. Still, they were mostly Nords and Dunmere, so it was hard to sway those two races. The battle went on, and the Forsworn refused to surrender until the last man. It seemed like admirable courage, but it was nothing but fanaticism. Luckily there were always prisoners, and by that, Lost Valley Redoubt fell in Alina's hands. Dealing with the aftermath was simple. The corpses were incinerated thoroughly and the prisoners were tied down and got interrogated. A tent was made for Alina on the mountain and the place was secured. She walked with firm steps towards the top of the mountain and arrived at Bard's Leap summit. This is the place where John jumped from to escape from the Forsworn? Alina looked down the mountain all the way to the far river. Yes, Lady Alina. Lord John was sighted escaping by jumping from here to the river, or that's what the merchants, that witnessed him, claim. The Imperial officer replied. Jumped that far? Svaken wondered. Believe it or not, the witnesses said that he had black wings and was maneuvering down in a volley of arrows. He didn't fly. Alina concluded. He must have used greed to glide. He always said it was possible, but why? She kept mumbling to herself. The ones around her didn't get a word. Any update on the interrogations? She asked. Yes, some of the prisoners cracked, Trudvar replied. Good, let's see what they have. An hour later. John was trapped here in this foul place? For 2 months? Alina gasped as soon as she arrived at the Briarheart Grove. On her shoulder, a small version of Gleam, the spirit of the Elder Gleam, was watching the sight with horrified eyes. Those trees, foul ones! So many of them? The trees were already destroyed by John, but they were still mostly intact with the corpses stuck on them and under their root. John destroyed them all, but why would he be stuck in those trees for 2 months? They were feeding on him. Gleam replied, these bad ones feed on people. But they were defeated in their own game. Your man has devoured them instead. Alina nodded as she sensed the answer. Traces of Podomic energy were everywhere in the grove. John cultivated on them while being captured and regained his power. He still had to cut his foot and some fingers to escape. It still confuses me. He was surely unable to cast magic. Those ones can put an ancient curse to stop devour magic. I am not sure of what happened to him, but it explains why was he impossible to locate with divination. Unable to use magic, yeah, I can accept that explanation. He should be still having problems with that and can't contact us or leave the Reach, but I am sure he will be fine. You are not worried. Why would I? His voice is still as strong as ever. He may be facing some hardships, but these are all minor setbacks for John. What I am worried about is his impulses. When men get desperate, they get stupid. John is not an exception. Alina smiled and thought of the declaration of war John made. Surely it will cause many problems. She cast a flame spell on the trees in the grove and turned everything to ash. Such foul things should be completely destroyed. Outside the grove, Sveikin was waiting for her. He approached her and whispered. A message from Lord Jonrad. He said we should camp in this place, and clear all the Forsworn around it, and keep watch on Karthspire settlement. The firemans will send reinforcements from the north. Good, I can at least cope with that. Alina nodded and started to prepare for a long-term camping. With her arriving at this place, the Forsworn were put on a tight situation. They are now blocked from the east by Alina and her militia, and from the west by John himself. From the north, the firemen will come, and the south is blocked by the Gerald Mountains. Still, who said there are no Forsworn allies in the south? It will all be revealed 7 days from now. After he arrived at Markarth and passed the regular checkup in the gate, John kept a low profile in the city and made sure to hide the Mace of Molag Ball. This thing was eye-catching and would give off a scary vibe of energy, but thankfully, it can be covered with ogreed to shape a large club or anything. The first aim is to find his trusty companion, Nefertiti. He had no clue on her location for 2 months, but one thing he knows that they are bound together by their souls. One of the things that made John feel grateful towards Herson. Nefertiti cannot die unless John himself dies. How so? John refused to become a werbeast as his soul should be clean to continue on his path of meditation. Herson wanted something from John, and John was already powerful to resist the blessing of the Prince of the Hunt and ever remove it, so Nefertiti became John's beast side and she started to mutate into a higher life form, the fairy. John was aware of her being already above the norm of being a werbeast and gradually taking over the blessing of Herson. And if she is near in Markarth, she will at least respond when she senses him. Even though the cursed vine is getting in the way of them sensing each other, a magical life form like her can sense a human when they called by a chant they like in a place near where they live. Thankfully, John knew just the song that Nefertiti loves. John went right away to the Silverblood Inn. The people inside saw him, and all went away. He was an infamous person known as Krylin, the bounty hunter. Mr. Krylin, welcome back. Should I prepare you the same room, or you are looking for a contract? Some of the Jarl's men left a bounty just a while ago. Thanks, Frabbi. John smiled. I'll just warm myself by the fire and have some honey mead. John walked quietly and sat by the fire, then had his mead and started looking at the fire and smiling. Once he was ready, he circulated his essence energy forcefully and activated bardic knowledge. Mary Poppins, Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Google it without copy, I dare you. It's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Even though the sound of it is something quite atrocious. If you say it loud enough, you'll always sound precocious. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.